Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description.
A 19-year-old boy sat in the office of his paranormal professor. His raven black hair was tousled at the back of his head, but this creative disorder did not spoil the young man's appearance at all. On the contrary, it gave the boy a certain mystery, which was emphasized by his secretive nature. Uchiha Sasuke, that was the name of the young man, did not communicate with his peers, and did not make friends. He always looked gloomy and tired, completely immersed in his thoughts and reflections. But at the same time, he was the best student at the university. Now he looked expectantly at the 60-year-old, almost bald man, with a heavy build. One glance at the professor could tell that his work at Oxford had cost him a lot of nerves. The student continued to bore into him with a heavy gaze of black, death-like eyes, waiting for Professor Yoshiro to deign to turn his attention to him. "So what do you want from me?" the professor finally said, letting out a resigned sigh and raising his head to the student. "I wanted to ask you for help," the guy answered, nervously fiddling with the edge of the sleeve of his long black t-shirt. "I'm listening," Yoshiro said tiredly, putting his thick glasses on his nose. The professor himself considered his subject to be the complete ravings of a madman and was very surprised to see the best student of the course in his office. Yoshiro had been studying paranormal phenomena since his youth, when the excitement was great, but over the years his enthusiasm had diminished, since the professor had never encountered anything real, beyond the bounds of understanding. Anyway, Sasuke began, after a rather long pause, trying to collect his thoughts into a single stream. "When it first happened, I was 8. Our parents died, and my brother and I were left alone. Our family was quite rich, and my brother, having hired the best lawyers, was able to prove in court that he was capable of being my guardian. I couldn't sleep then. I was constantly tormented by nightmares. One day, I couldn't stand it." Sasuke fell silent, thinking about something, but the expression on his face clearly showed fear. "I was so scared," the guy said in an almost sepulchral voice, "that I decided to go to my brother's room. I walked along the corridor. There was no light anywhere, so I shied away from every sound and rustle. There were only a couple of steps left to my brother's bedroom, when I heard the creak of the opening door. I froze in place, watching my brother slowly leave the room. I called him, but he did not answer. He just walked past without even looking, which is not like him at all. My brother went down the stairs to the first floor and went outside. I rushed after him, calling, but when I opened the door, he was nowhere to be found. I sat by the door all night, huddled in a corner," the guy continued. "The hours dragged on slowly, and it seemed to me that the night would never end. And then, closer to dawn, my brother returned. His face was cut, and his clothes were covered in blood. He also went to his room, completely ignoring my presence, undressed and went to bed. I was scared. I didn't understand what was happening. But when the first rays of the sun broke through the horizon, the wounds on my brother's body began to heal. Then I shook him by the shoulder, and my brother opened his eyes, looking at me with a worried look. 'What's the matter?' he asked. But I couldn't explain, everything that had happened seemed beyond reality. All I could do was scream, demanding to know where he had been that night. My brother blinked a couple of times, and then, somewhat taken aback, replied that he was asleep. Then I couldn't take it anymore and burst into tears. My brother put me to bed with him and stroked my head, saying that I had a nightmare and that he was nearby. I believed him, but this has been going on for 11 years now." The professor took off his glasses, tiredly rubbing his temples, and exhaled heavily. "You know, Sasuke, I'm a theorist, not a practitioner. I give lectures to the same gullible and impressionable children as you. I can tell you only one thing with certainty. Nothing supernatural exists in our world. Otherwise I would have found it. But I couldn't even imagine that you would believe in this nonsense." "What?" Sasuke couldn't believe his ears. "Listen," Yoshiro continued, "you've chosen the right course. Most likely, your brother has dissociative identity disorder, a condition where... I know perfectly well what a split personality is." Sasuke was indignant. "And I also know that there must be prerequisites for it, which there weren't. So, don't make a psycho out of my brother. He's a genius, He has a doctorate in applied physics and mathematics. Sasuke, it's hard for me to talk to you about this, but such people, gifted, brilliant, lose touch with reality more often than not. You should think about it, and let the specialists deal with your brother's problems. Go to hell, you old goat. Uchiha couldn't resist jumping up from his seat. My brother is not crazy. The guy left the office, slamming the door so loudly that even the plaster fell. Old freak. He shouted angrily, walking away down the corridor, when the professor's voice reached his ears. Sasuke, I'll give you a pass automatically, don't come to my lectures anymore. 2 days had passed since the conversation with Yoshiro, but Sasuke still hadn't come to terms with his professor's conclusions. Something strange was happening to his brother. Yes, Uchiha himself had previously believed that it was a mental illness, but in light of recent events, the guy had revised his conclusions. Having studied all the available medical literature, the brunette realized that none of the diseases known to medicine fit the clinical picture he was witnessing. And the more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that something was fishy. Sasuke walked along the large corridors of the old multi-story university building, shuffling his feet rather quickly. His classmates had a lecture on paranormal phenomena, but Uchiha was exempt from them and, moreover, the professor always showed him the door if the boy decided to come to class. Lost in his thoughts, the brunette did not immediately notice that someone was calling him. Finally, he stopped and turned half around, a habit he had adopted from his brother. Itachi never turned to face those he did not want to talk to. A girl was running towards him across the corridor. Her black hair was tied into a neat bun, she was wearing a gray business suit, the narrow skirt of which did not allow her to take long steps, and her high-heeled shoes almost cost her a fracture. The younger Uchiha could boast of an excellent memory for faces, but he saw this person for the first time. And even if they had met before, Sasuke would definitely remember her eyes. Warm brown with a golden ring around the pupil. Well, finally, she said, trying to catch her breath, you noticed me. Do we know each other? The guy asked. My name is Tsubaki Nakahara. I am Professor Yoshiro's assistant. So what? The brunette couldn't understand the reasons why this girl was running after him. Although it was hard to imagine her among the younger Uchiha's fans. I heard part of your conversation with the professor, Tsubaki replied, finally getting her breathing back to normal. Anyway, I want to help. Sasuke was silent, looking closely at her face, trying to understand what she really meant. But there was not a shadow of a trick or mockery in the girl's gaze. The professor is giving a lecture now and he needs me, Tsubaki continued, still not waiting for an answer. Wait for me in the cafe opposite the university, I'll explain everything to you there. Sasuke thought about it, still looking at his new acquaintance with distrust, but having made a decision, he nodded his head. It couldn't get any worse anyway. That's great, Tsubaki smiled. Then, we'll meet there. The girl turned on her heels and walked quickly towards the lecture hall. Uchiha continued to stand in the same place, looking at the retreating figure. He must have gone crazy to agree so easily. But what's done can't be undone, and Sasuke was always a man of his word. So, putting his hands in his trouser pockets, the guy headed for the exit of the building. Once outside, he quickly crossed the large park that stretched out in front of the central building of the educational institution. Having left the gates of the alma mater, the brunette walked across the London Bridge, finding himself on the other side of the Thames, where the cafe beloved by Oxford students was located. Uchiha himself had never been here, preferring to spend less time among people unworthy of his attention, but he could not help but hear about this cafe. The establishment turned out to be surprisingly quiet and uncrowded. Sasuke took a far table by the window, safely hidden in the very corner. As soon as the guy took a comfortable pose, leaning back on the chair, a waitress immediately ran up to him, giving the visitor a radiant smile. Uchiha immediately recognized the long-haired blonde, often encountered on his way. Yamanaka Ino studied art history, again at Oxford. What will you order? Ino babbled, playfully winking at the guy with her only blue eye visible from under her long bangs. Coffee, the brunette answered briefly, trying to get rid of the unpleasant company as quickly as possible. Which one exactly? The blonde asked, clearly not intending to leave the client as quickly as he had expected. We have a large selection: cappuccino, latte, americano, espresso. Double espresso, the guy began to lose patience. With milk? Ino asked eagerly. Black, no sugar. The guy almost growled. The blonde wrote down the order in her notebook and, bowing, hurried to leave the guest. But Sasuke stopped her. Anything else? She babbled with hope in her voice. Do you serve dango? The guy asked. Dango? The girl was surprised, but soon came to her senses and smiled sweetly. No. But if you wait, it will be prepared for you. I'm in no hurry, the brunette responded, glancing at his watch, making sure that there was still about an hour left before the end of the lecture. Okay. How many servings? The waitress asked again. 2, the guy answered firmly, but then quickly corrected himself. Although, 4 would be better. Thank you for the order, Ino smiled contentedly and hurried to hide behind the bar counter, from where the door led to the kitchen. A second later, from behind which a joyful squeaky voice was heard. Dad, he spoke to me. Sasuke exhaled tiredly, once again amazed by the stupidity of the opposite sex. He could never understand them, these pink fairies and rhinestones. Sometimes it even seemed to him that they had those same rhinestones and other trinkets instead of brains. Sasuke could not find a common language with them. Even in Japan, the guy had a need to protect himself from immense stupidity, but then he could not completely abstract himself, since his best friend was a complete idiot. Now they communicated only on the phone, once every couple of weeks, and the younger Uchiha felt great, finally stopping suffering from the unbearable headache that accompanied him along the way for all the years of communication with Uzumaki Naruto. Time passed, and after an hour the cafe began to gradually fill up with students who decided to catch their breath after classes. After another 15 minutes, all the tables were occupied. Sasuke let out a tired sigh, glancing at the dango box, forlornly standing to the side and waiting for its turn. Tsubaki did not appear, and the brunette, finally losing his patience, stood up from his seat, throwing his jacket over his shoulders. At that moment, the cafe door swung open and a short brunette appeared on the threshold. Purple strands were visible in her long, almost waist-length hair. The girl was dressed in tight black jeans, a black tank top, and sneakers with acid green lacing. She was holding a denim jacket in her hands. Noticing the brunette about to leave, she headed straight towards him. Sorry, I was late, the girl said, and Sasuke winced, finally turning his attention to her. Only now he noticed the golden rings around the pupils of her brown eyes and recognized Tsubaki in her, although there was little resemblance to the Oxford professor's assistant. The girl's neck was adorned with a huge number of all possible pendants and chains, which made her every step ring. Nakahara sat down at the table and Sasuke, taking off his jacket and throwing it on the neighboring seat, followed her example. Dango? She was surprised, noticing the box of sweets resting in the brunette's hands. I didn't know they made them here. A custom order, the guy answered indifferently. Of course, Tsubaki smiled strangely at her interlocutor. Ino immediately approached the table with her ever-present notebook. Hello, Tsubaki-san, as usual? Yes, the brunette responded. Just bring 2. I'm very thirsty. Of course, the girl immediately disappeared from sight. Do you know Ino? The brunette was amazed. That was Sasuke Uchiha all over. It was hard to expect respect from him. Even Oxford professors often heard the dismissive you addressed to them. Yes, Nakaharu explained, pretending it was a given. When Professor Yoshiro's lectures started in your year, Ino and Sakura came to me and asked for material for independent study. Sakura? The brunette asked again. Haruno Sakura. Don't tell me you don't know her. She's the only one with pink hair at the university, Tsubaki giggled. I know. We went to high school together, but I didn't know she got into Oxford too. Come on, she's following you around like a tail. Ino approached the table, holding 2 tall glasses filled to the brim with mineral water with ice and lemon juice on a tray. Having given Sasuke an enthusiastic look, the blonde hurried to another table, where a couple of students were already ready to place an order. The Uchiha followed her with a heavy, bored look and returned his attention to the girl opposite, sipping a cold drink from a glass. Do you like her? Tsubaki asked. It seems we came here for something else, the guy snorted angrily, looking away towards the window, behind which the clear sun had given way to the usual London greyness, and drops of the beginning rain slowly rushed to the ground, trickling down the glass in thin streams. "Are you always this unsociable, or is it just with me?" Tsubuki continued speaking, ignoring the boy's displeasure. "Always," Sasuke responded coldly, turning his gaze to her. "It wasn't me who asked for the meeting, it was you. So it's in your best interest to start the conversation without waiting for me to leave." "You think too highly of yourself, young man," the girl snorted. "Everyone will turn away from you. Even Ino and Sakura. Although, I still can't understand what they saw in you. One pretty face is not enough." "I'm tired of this," the guy growled, rising from his seat. "Sit down," Nakahara said in a commanding tone, causing Sasuke to jump up in his seat. "I'm not going to tolerate your insolence. Either you treat me like an equal, or you deal with this yourself." "What did you want?" The guy was indignant, but took his previous place. "You called me to talk, but you haven't said a word for 10 minutes. "I'm talking to you," she said seriously, narrowing her eyes, looking straight at the arrogant brunette. "I'm trying to understand what kind of person you are and whether it's worth getting involved with you at all. Have some conscience. The world doesn't revolve around you. And it's not me who needs help, it's you." Sasuke fell silent, his head hanging dejectedly and looking at his palms. Tsubaki continued to sip her cool cocktail, her brown eyes fixed on the window. Passers-by were wrapped in jackets and coats, umbrellas open above their heads. Not only the sky was grey in London, but also the people and their mood. This shade brought on depressive thoughts and made one feel tired. "Before we discuss everything, there's something you should know about me," the girl said as quietly as possible. Sasuke raised his head, but she continued to look out the window at the puddles appearing on the sidewalk. Sasuke looked at the girl, waiting for her to continue, but the silence dragged on. Finally, she exhaled tiredly and turned her head to her interlocutor. "I grew up in the orphanage St. Augustine. It's in Rome," she began, looking the guy in the eyes. "Actually, I was born in Japan, but I became an orphan at 5. And I understand you very well." Tsubaki fell silent. The look in her beautiful, warm eyes faded as she turned to the window. Sasuke looked at her attentively, not daring to say a word, as if he froze, turned into a stone statue, and seemed to have stopped breathing. The silence dragged on again, hanging over their table in a tense silence. Nakahara was thinking about something, thoughtfully examining the stream of water erupting from the sky. The Uchiha only noticed out of the corner of his eye her beautiful profile in the reflection of the window glass. "My family died." The girl's barely audible whisper was difficult to hear, and if Sasuke had not remained completely silent, the words would have dissolved into extraneous sounds. "And I am to blame for this, albeit inadvertently. I remember everything as if it happened yesterday. The events of those days are forever imprinted in my memory, and even now, I wake up in a cold sweat when the ghosts of the past appear to me in nightmares." Still not turning around, Tsubaki took another sip of her cold cocktail, as if she wanted to keep the conversation impersonal, stubbornly avoiding looking the guy in the eyes. Sasuke, being familiar with the basics of psychology as part of his future profession, saw the stiffness and tension of his interlocutor and saw all the internal torments, noting to himself that Nakahara touched on this topic extremely rarely and reluctantly, preferring to keep her secrets to herself. "I was 5. Her voice turned into a hoarse, broken whisper, and now Sasuke had to strain his ears to make out individual words. He wouldn't dare ask her to speak louder, the memories were too heavy. "We were children, we liked to play where adults forbade it. The town we lived in was small, only 9 streets, and even a child could easily walk the length and breadth of it without even getting out of breath. On the outskirts of the city stood a house. A gloomy gray building, cast from concrete. It had once been a residential building in which a family of 5 lived, but then, one fateful night, the house caught fire. All its inhabitants burned alive, never managing to get out. It was a long time ago, long before I was born. So that house stood, abandoned by everyone, burnt out, uninhabited. The old people said that its walls were haunted by ghosts who had not found peace, and that it was dangerous to go inside, but the children's curiosity could not be stopped." Tsubaki paused again, catching her breath, but continued immediately. "We called it a test of courage. The girl's lips touched a crooked, forced smile, saturated with pain and bile. Everyone had to enter the house alone and stay there for 5 minutes. My older brother was the first, he heroically endured this test, then others. I was the last. I remember entering the house, I remember how fear paralyzed my body, and my skin became covered in goosebumps. I remember listening to every rustle. On the first floor, right under the stairs, a doorway gaped like a black hole. I was little, only because of my brother I ended up in the company of older kids, but I did not want them to stop being friends with my brother because his sister was a coward. I walked along the walls, waiting for my torment to end and for him to call me, but time seemed to have stopped. I waited to hear my brother's voice, but it wasn't there, and then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a faint light in that very room under the door. It was a firefly. Do you know that in Japanese mythology, a firefly symbolizes the souls of the dead? Or rather, the souls of the innocently killed, thirsting for revenge? She turned her head to Sasuke, looking intently into his eyes. The guy shuddered under her stern gaze, like a shell left without a soul. He shuddered. No, I didn't know, he finally answered, collecting his thoughts. I didn't know then either, Tsubaki said, turning away to the window, and Sasuke noticed large pearls of tears rolling down her cheeks. But I should have. I don't remember what happened next, when I wanted to catch a firefly. I only know that my brother found me unconscious in the children's room on the second floor half an hour later. Although I was completely sure that I hadn't even taken a step up the stairs. We didn't talk about it anymore and tried to forget, and my parents didn't need to know. And 3 days later my hamster died. They buried him. I remember how I decorated the box for the coffin, buried him behind the house, under the sakura. Then the cat followed him. She died in my bed, lying on my chest. Then the dog. I cried a lot then. They bought me a canary, but it didn't last longer than 3 days. And there was this stench everywhere. You know, when the sewer breaks, but not such a typical one, more like a dead one, but no one felt it except me. Then a strange disease mowed down all the roses in my mother's garden and switched to the trees. What my parents didn't do, they bought fertilizers and pest control chemicals by the ton. Our garden was dying, slowly and painfully. Were you sitting outside late at night, or early in the morning? You know that life flows around you. Mosquitoes overcome you at night, birds sing in the morning, butterflies flutter. None of this happened. Complete deathly silence. And then there was that night. I remember my brother waking me up and dragging me downstairs in my nightgown. The first floor was already in flames. I could hear my mother and father screaming. You can't even imagine how hard it is to know that your family is burning alive, and the smell of burning flesh is spreading all around. My brother pushed me out of the house, but he couldn't do it himself. A burning beam fell right in front of his feet. I saw his flesh peeling off from his body from the intense heat, saw his clothes engulfed in flames, saw him thrashing about, trying to escape, and heard his screams. They still ring in my ears. And then there was that voice telling me that there was nowhere to run and I was next. Ino approached the table, still with the same welcoming, but a mile away striking falseness, smile. The guy watched her carefully, out of the corner of his eye, while Tsubaki delved into her difficult memories, not because he was not interested, but because Sasuke believed that too much attention to painful moments in life only provokes the oppression of mental health. That is why he looked away, but did not miss a single word she said. He understood her like no one else. They both had too much in common in the past, heavy losses, and an abyss of melancholy that burned alive. But Sasuke had a brother for whom he would do anything, and Nakahara had no one left. Maybe you want something else? Ino's cheerful voice burst into the Uchiha's consciousness, and he looked up at her, incinerating her with a piercing gaze. How tactless did one have to be happy in such a situation? The atmosphere that reigned around their modest couple was tense, soaked in pain, oozing with poison, so disgusting that Sasuke would have given it the blackest shade of all the variations of this color. And how did Ino not notice this? Although, where would a stupid blonde feel such subtle matters from? Sasuke once again caught himself thinking that he hated humanity as a whole, as a species that godlessly littered its home. No, he was not a sociopath, and there were people he liked, but they were insignificantly few. The first on this list was undoubtedly Itachi, and Naruto followed him at a significant distance. Tsubaki did not irritate him either, although at first he felt some discomfort in communicating with her. Maybe it was worth being more open? But Sasuke could not stand turning his soul inside out in front of people he barely knew. He would not be able to become normal, from the point of view of society. Ino, bring an ashtray. Nakahara's voice was clear, completely different from the otherworldly whisper she had spoken with a minute ago. The blonde smiled, nodding her head, and sharply turned around 180 degrees, waving her long tail, almost touching the Uchiha's face. Do you smoke? The guy asked. He wanted to hear what happened next, but he had no right to demand answers to his questions. Sometimes. The girl responded, reaching for her jacket, searching for a pack of cigarettes and matches in the pocket. Sasuke was surprised by such a set. He had not seen people who even occasionally inhaled the acrid smoke of tobacco products use matches for a long time. Moreover, he considered this product made of wood and sulfur a rarity, something from a bygone era. It was akin to seeing a dinosaur wandering the streets of London. The Indians believed that the aroma of lit tobacco drove away evil spirits. And you believe that? Sasuke's skepticism was bothering him. He was used to looking at things rationally, finding explanations, and not relying on blind faith, although he could not find an explanation for his brother's behavior. Nakahara smiled, turning to face him, peering into his eyes, as if she hoped to find truths hidden even from Sasuke himself. Sometimes you have to believe. Just feel it, here. She pulled her clenched fist to her chest, resting it against her heart. You won't get far without it. Ino returned with a cheap glass ashtray, quickly placing it on the table, and then quickly leaving. Tsubaki lit a cigarette, drawing the resinous smoke into her lungs, spreading the light scent of green apples around her. How did your parents die? She asked unexpectedly, when Uchiha least expected it. They were killed. Robbery. The guy said distantly, although a cold gleam flashed in his eyes. He was still thinking about revenge. Itachi always said that it was stupid and the path of revenge only leads to a sad end for the avenger himself, killing his soul, but Sasuke could not forgive. He simply did not find the strength in himself. The criminals were never caught, not even evidence was found. A single, carefully planned crime. Sometimes Sasuke thought that he would be much happier to know that his parents were victims of a serial maniac. He could be found and identified. I see. The girl drawled, returning her gaze to the window. The weather outside showed no sign of clearing up, on the contrary, it seemed like it would rain for another week without a single break. So how did you end up in Rome? Uchiha made an attempt, all that was left was to wait for the result. Tsubaki took a drag, releasing grayish smoke from her mouth. It's not interesting anymore, she said. After that incident, I fell silent. I didn't speak for more than 2 years. Psychologists fought with me, saying that it was the consequences of the shock I had experienced. Shelters refused me, afraid that I would harm myself and other wards, so I was thrown from side to side until I ended up in a mental hospital. Why? The guy was surprised. Do they really treat psychological disorders in such institutions? I had suicidal tendencies. I tried to commit suicide several times. Then the doctors and social services decided that it would be better for my own good if I were constantly supervised. Tsubaki's speech changed and now flowed in a continuous stream, as if she were retelling the plot of a favorite but long-forgotten book. That's where I met him, Father Frederick. Perhaps Providence itself brought us together. Father Frederick is an outstanding figure in the Vatican, and, let's face it, I still don't know why he came to Japan. He saved me and took me with him. I grew up under his supervision in an orphanage and learned his craft. Sasuke thought about it. What kind of craft could a priest of the Roman Catholic Church teach was a mystery to him. And what did he do? He asked, wincing. Tsubaki looked him in the eyes again with a slight smile on her lips, which made Sasuke feel like a complete idiot who had blurted out a brilliant stupidity. Father Frederick, Nakahara began, putting out her cigarette in the ashtray, is a leading expert in demonology and one of the best practicing exorcists. Despite the fact that he is almost 90, Father Frederick has not abandoned his practice. Many of his followers, students, and simply admiring observers want to canonize him while he is still alive. Sasuke listened attentively, and as she spoke, the boy's eyes widened, threatening to fall out of their sockets. Demonologist. Exorcist. So, how did he save you? Uchiha couldn't hold back a surprised exclamation, no matter how hard he tried to remain impartial. You already understood everything yourself. Tsubaki responded. He drove the demon out of me. Sasuke thought, deeply and for a long time. Many questions were spinning in his head, the answers to which he could not find, or maybe he simply did not pay attention to the flashes of clear thoughts. This whole story was a new revelation for him, not confirmed by the rational brain. Demons, exorcists, everything seemed so unreal that for a second there was a feeling as if he fell out of reality and found himself on the film of an old low-budget horror movie. To be more sure that everything was really happening to him, and now, the guy pinched his arm. The pain was real, which meant that he was not sleeping, but the option with impending madness did not lose its charm. Wait. He finally raised his head, looking at the girl opposite, beaming with the brilliant thought that had struck him. But demons, devils, whatever they are, manifest themselves. People walk on the ceiling, are afraid of crucifixes. Sasuke, Nakahara smiled broadly, revealing a row of even snow-white teeth. You've been watching too many horror movies. In real life, everything is completely different, and the exorcism procedure is fundamentally different from the movie versions. People are comfortable believing that in the name of God they can protect themselves from any evil, but this is not true. Yes, demons react to incense and crucifixes, to prayers and the ringing of bells, but not nearly as much as we would like. And that epic phrase that movie makers throw around so much, "In the name of the Lord, I cast you out," will not produce any results. For them, it is akin to swearing, and even people do not panic from strong language. In order to free my soul, Father Frederick worked with me for 2 weeks, gradually getting to the truth, bringing the demon to clean water. This is a game, and the one who is more cunning will win. Tsubaki didn't say another word. After sitting for a couple of minutes, looking at the rain outside the window, she got up from her seat, put a few rolled-up bills on the table and, taking her jacket, headed for the exit. Sasuke hurried after her, but the prospect of getting wet didn't please him. He stopped under the canopy of the building. So what's the plan? Sasuke shouted to the girl standing in the rain, her pretty face exposed to the cold drops. I need to think, she answered indifferently, turning her back to the guy. I like the rain, and you? Without waiting for an answer, she slowly walked down the street. A blurred silhouette under the drops of pouring rain soon disappeared from the Uchiha's sight, leaving the boy completely alone. Icy raindrops mercilessly lashed his skin in slanting streams. Sasuke didn't like the rain, he didn't like feeling the cold on his body, but he couldn't move. Still standing under the cafe's canopy, the young man tried to put his scattered thoughts in order. He had no faith, moreover, everything Nakahara said seemed like complete nonsense, now, but not 10 minutes ago, when she sat opposite him, looking out the window. We are all obsessed. No, not in the sense that ghosts are chasing us around the house. That would be too easy. But we are all obsessed with something. Something we did or didn't do. A life-changing event in the past. A missed opportunity. The death of a loved one. Or unhealthy desires, habits. Or phobias. Everyone has them. Some people are afraid of heights, others of spiders, snakes, food, name any object and you will get someone's phobia. How we deal with our obsessions is what makes us human. For better or for worse. Do we try to deal with these dark spots and move on with our lives? Or do we simply avoid them, ignore them? We are all possessed, one way or another, Professor Yoshiro said as he began his lectures, and now these words echoed in the mind of the boy, trying to grasp the ghostly reality filled with rationality. His head began to ache mercilessly, from the multitude of thoughts. No, this is just nonsense. This can't be. There was an explanation for everything, even sunspots. You just had to wait for that explanation to come, and Sasuke knew how to be patient. He smiled, adjusting a strand of wet hair that was stuck to his face. Now, more than ever, he could picture Itachi's laughing face, although Sasuke hadn't seen him like that for a long time, when he would find out what thoughts were growing in his stupid little brother's head. And Sasuke felt ashamed. No, he wouldn't say anything to Itachi, he didn't need his brother to actually laugh at him. The younger Uchiha pulled his jacket over his head and headed to the side of the road, hailing a taxi. Fortunately, there was a free cab nearby, and he didn't have to stay wet for long. The car's interior greeted the guy with pleasant warmth, enveloping his frozen limbs. Having given the address, Sasuke spent a few minutes looking at the high-rise buildings of the business part of the city flashing by the window, and then he himself did not notice how he fell asleep. The car jerked and stopped abruptly. Sasuke jumped up in his seat, almost hitting his head on the back of the front seat. Having paid, the guy reluctantly left the warm interior, once again finding himself under a stream of pouring rain. Having taken a couple of steps along the sidewalk, the Uchiha hissed and cursed loudly, remembering all the obscene words he knew. A passing sedan doused him from head to toe with cold, dirty water. Jumping over a large puddle that formed on that part of the sidewalk whenever the skies opened up to rain, Sasuke hurried to hide behind the door of his house. This residential area of London was not as old as its main part. Houses here began to be built only in 1830, under the watchful eye of Her Majesty Queen Victoria. Most of the buildings were, of course, modern, but the Uchiha were lucky enough to buy a wreck that had not seen any repairs since its construction, and the previous owner had already managed to add the building to the list of national treasures and cultural heritage, so they had no right to tailor the house as they saw fit. Even simply changing the wallpaper entailed a huge pile of paperwork and long meetings in the councils. Fortunately, Itachi's flexible schedule allowed him to attend such meetings. As soon as he found himself in the corridor, Sasuke pulled off his wet jacket and threw it on the cast-iron radiator, forlornly hiding in the corner. The smell of dampness, which had become familiar, immediately hit his nose. Old books, covered with a thick, more than a century-old layer of dust, had long since turned into gloomy gray paper, preserving the memory of previous owners in the form of children's drawings and greasy handprints. Sasuke sighed wearily. Their house in Tokyo was much cozier and warmer. Here, traces of the life of rodents were visible everywhere, mercilessly destroying the baseboards and floorboards. In the main room, from which the stairs led to the second floor, the walls were covered along the perimeter with antique copper sconces, but not a single light bulb burned in them due to damaged wiring, and in most of the rooms they had to use candles. Well, the gas was supplied without interruptions, which was confirmed by the pleasant aroma from the kitchen, filling the room with sweet notes of cinnamon and chocolate, Itachi's favorite cocoa. Sasuke knew this smell from deep childhood and he did not need to try it, he already knew how sweet it was, so much so that sometimes his teeth ached, but now, standing in the living room wet and dirty, like a curly kitten, he was ready to sell his soul for a cup of this divine nectar. The second floor creaked, and Sasuke smiled, turning to face Itachi, who was standing on the stairs, wiping his wet long hair, slightly lighter than Sasuke's own, with a fluffy towel. The elder looked his brother over from head to toe with a critical gaze of deep black eyes. "What kind of sewer did you end up in?" Itachi's voice was mocking, but Sasuke didn't pay attention to it, he really didn't look his best. "It's better for you not to know." The younger one responded sadly and continued on his way to the kitchen, hoping to warm up. "Why are you so early? I thought you'd be late today." "The meeting has been adjourned." Itachi followed him, stopping in the doorway and watching his brother pour cocoa into a mug, spilling it as always. "Oh, shit!" Sasuke cursed, jerking his hand away and nearly dropping the mug. Itachi's lips twitched into a small smile, but he didn't comment. "Maybe you should go and take a bath, slob. And shall I bring you some cocoa?" Sasuke thought it would be much better this way. Sasuke filled the old cast-iron bathtub with water and dove in. How could he think his brother was crazy? There was no better older brother in the world. Itachi always knew the words to calm him down, and one word from him was enough to make Sasuke go berserk. Sasuke never suffered from phobias, he was not afraid of spiders, snakes and other nasty things, but he was afraid of the night, or rather the creature that his brother turned into. The big clock downstairs struck midnight, its loud voice spreading through the empty rooms. Sasuke had not slept. For an hour now he had been sitting on his bed, his back pressed against the wall, the blanket wrapped around his head. It was a habit, distant, still childish, as if it could protect him. Every night Sasuke prayed for nothing to happen, but it happened again and again. Then he heard the creak of a door and quiet footsteps down the hall, accompanied by the sound of claws biting into rotten floorboards. Itachi's room was further down the hall, and he always passed his younger brother's room. Why Sasuke had chosen this room, he didn't know, but he could no longer live peacefully if he didn't know what his brother was doing. The footsteps stopped in front of his door, and Sasuke was ready to swear that he had been given the gift of X-ray vision. His imagination vividly drew a picture of a huge bull-like creature looking at him through the door with red eyes and nervously sniffing the air with large nostrils. Sasuke held his breath. He was afraid to move or make even the slightest sound. He was sure that if he showed that he was there, this monster would rush at him, tearing the door off its hinges, and no locks would stop it. The younger Uchiha did not tell his professor everything. Itachi had long since stopped being calm at such moments. One day, Sasuke stayed late at a friend's and was returning home after midnight. Then he met Itachi on the porch and only miraculously remained alive, as if his brother had regained consciousness when he almost strangled him. Then, having received freedom for only a second, Sasuke rushed into the house and locked himself in the room. From then on, he always tried to be home before 11, even setting an alarm on his phone so as not to miss the time. The footsteps moved further down the hallway, and Sasuke remained sitting on the bed, crumpling the blanket in his fists and biting his lips until they bled. How long he sat like that, afraid to move or take a deep breath, he didn't know, but when the phone on the nightstand vibrated, the guy jerked in surprise, hitting his head hard against the wall. Hello? Uchiha couldn't even guess who needed him at such a late hour, and the clock showed 2:30 in the morning. Sasuke, are you awake? Nakahara's voice caught him off guard. Uchiha remembered that he hadn't given her his number, but he didn't ask anything, and she apparently wasn't going to waste time answering. We'll meet in half an hour, near the Central Park. Why? That was all the guy could ask. I have something to show you. The voice on the phone cut off and long beeps were heard. Sasuke reluctantly crawled out of his hiding place and, having dressed, went downstairs. It was the first time he had left the house at such a late hour. The rain had not only not stopped by night, it had not even decreased, and Sasuke was cursing dirty, walking through puddles. Soon the Central Park appeared before his eyes, and near the gate the guy noticed the reason for his headache and bad mood, Nakahara Tsubaki. She, like Sasuke, was wet from head to toe. It was obvious that she had spent more than 1 hour outside. I came. The guy said rather rudely. What I wanted. Just don't tell me that the princess was offended that she wasn't allowed to sleep. Tsubaki smiled her sweetest smile, fluttering her long eyelashes. Very funny. Uchiha snorted. So, anyway? Let's go. The girl didn't let him get a word in, grabbed his hand and dragged him to the park. Sasuke tried to pull his hand out of her grip, but all his efforts failed. The guy was so defenseless only in front of his older brother, but he was not even close now. Tsubaki stopped under a spreading chestnut tree, but its branches could not protect her from the nasty raindrops. Sasuke looked around, but did not notice anything, and not only because he did not want to notice, but because of the poor lighting. The street lamps were far behind, illuminating the path. So what? He asked, looking at the girl carefully. Tsubaki rolled her eyes and pointed her finger under the tree. Uchiha took a few uncertain steps and still saw it, but he couldn't understand what. Nakahara was nearby, shining a pocket flashlight, and Sasuke froze. Squirrels. The bodies of the small and cute animals were gutted. The wounds still showed traces of razor-sharp teeth. The internal organs were missing. But Sasuke couldn't assess the situation correctly. Are you in the Animal Protection Society? He asked with a hint of sarcasm. But he didn't have time to get an answer. High up in the tree, a branch snapped. Tsubaki jerked, jumping back into the shadows, turning off her flashlight. Sasuke instinctively followed her example. His eyesight is poor. Tsubaki whispered, barely audible. The Uchiha turned to face her, searching for answers, but her face made him suppress any attempts to continue the conversation. And a second later, something black landed from the tree on all fours. Sasuke's mouth dropped open in surprise as the dark figure began to grow, rising to its feet and standing to its full height. Nissan? Sasuke said it instinctively, without thinking about the consequences, and Tsubaki didn't have time to warn him. Itachi's head jerked sharply, turning back, and his body rushed to the source of the sound, squeezing the guy's throat in a steel grip. Sasuke cursed himself, but he could do nothing. His face was stained with blood, distorted by a wild grimace of hatred. Burgundy drops were running down his beautiful lips. His hands were also covered in blood, but they interested Sasuke the least of all now, except for the fact that one of them was furiously pressing on his neck, trying to break his vertebrae. Nakahara rummaged through her pockets and soon took out a small flask. Opening it, she threw it at the feet of the older Uchiha. The pleasant aroma seemed familiar to Sasuke, but due to the lack of oxygen, his thoughts were confused. Itachi jerked, smelling the smell, and let go of Sasuke, disappearing into the darkness. Turning around one last time, he threw a bloody look at the girl. Sasuke fell to his knees, coughing and rubbing his neck. Tsubaki walked up to him. "Are you a complete idiot? Why the hell did you call him?" She was angry and wasn't going to make any concessions even to his condition. Uchiha raised his guilty gaze. He himself understood that he had acted stupidly, but nothing could be changed. He should have stood and watched quietly, but no. "Enough," Sasuke interrupted her, "I understand everything. And I believe you. But I don't understand, what does this have to do with squirrels?" "He's feeding," Tsubaki replied indifferently. "It's a good thing his diet doesn't include people. Although that could change." Sasuke woke up early. The sun was still crawling over the horizon, blinding his sleepy face with its rays. Pulling the blanket over his head, the boy turned over on his other side, intending to continue sleeping, but it was not to be. His head responded with a wild pain. This was always the case when the younger Uchiha did not get enough sleep, and it was this state of his body that caused his bad mood. The wall clock was steadily ticking away the hours, but now this sound seemed to be the loudest in the world, absorbing all the others. Sasuke winced. He couldn't even remember the last time he slept normally. It seemed he hadn't been able to do it since birth. A cold hand slipped out from under the blanket and reached for the bedside table, on which pills usually lay, accompanied by a glass of water. This was a kind of ritual that the brunette had not broken since childhood. But now the surface of the wooden furniture was empty. "Your mother!" The guy cursed, sitting up, still wrapped in a woolen blanket. Sasuke had suffered from vascular problems since childhood, and because of this he was very cold. And now that he and his brother had moved to London, he couldn't warm up at all. The heating system of the house required a thorough overhaul, but they had never received permission for it. The brunette stretched, yawning widely. What a misfortune this morning. Only now did he realize that today was Sunday, and there was no need to go anywhere, but Sasuke had already woken up, which meant he would not fall asleep again. Pulling the blanket over his head and wrapping himself in it like a cocoon, the younger Uchiha headed to the first floor in search of a first aid kit. Something urgently needed to be done about the headache, otherwise the feeling squeezing his temples would drive him crazy. His bare feet quietly slapped on the rotten boards, barely audible echoing off the walls. On the stairs, Sasuke stopped, casting a pained glance back, where his brother's room was hidden in the shadows of the corridor. Quiet. So, Itachi was still asleep. Which was not surprising. Memories of the previous night covered his head like a crazy avalanche. Sasuke even grabbed it with his hands so as not to fall down. Itachi. Squirrels. Tsubaki. How did he end up at home, and most importantly, what time? What happened after that incident in the park? The brunette clearly felt his brother's hands on his neck and his breath caught. Sasuke rubbed his neck, as if it could brush away the invisible pressure. To his surprise, he found a fine chain weave, although he never wore jewelry. Yeah, damn it. He groaned, but his brain stubbornly refused to bring clarity to what he had experienced. Sasuke sat down on the steps of the stairs, leaning his temple against the cold wall to ease the pain a little, but it didn't help much. Uchiha winced, but examined the pendant hanging around his neck. It looked like silver. It was round, with intricate curves, more like a walnut. He turned the find in his fingers again. This didn't bring any clarity, but a small clasp was found. Uchiha picked it up with his fingernail and watched in surprise as the nut split in two, and the air around it filled with a rich aroma. Sasuke noted that he had smelled the same aroma yesterday. Essential oil, but what kind? The smell was too familiar, but not in such a concentration. And then something clicked in my head. What is it? Sasuke asked, watching his brother leave. His head still didn't want to wrap its head around everything that was happening, but it was necessary to know what she had done to scare him off. Lavender, Tsubaki answered briefly, rummaging through her pockets, completely ignoring his presence. It helps calm the nerves, it works on them too. On them? Sasuke didn't understand. Demons. Or have you forgotten what we're doing here? Wait. Uchiha rose to his feet. Are you sure it's a demon? It could be true, stress, etc. This isn't the first time I've encountered this. Nakahara fell silent, then gave Sasuke a reproachful, heavy look. You said you believed me, and now you're resisting again? It's just that it doesn't fit. Sasuke began to make excuses, but the girl brazenly interrupted him. Doesn't fit with what? What, I ask, does this fit with? Open your eyes. What explanation do you want to find? Taking a deep breath, Tsubaki adjusted her hair. Okay, I won't pressure you. Here. She handed him the medallion. It also has lavender in it. Essential oil, Tsubaki explained, watching Sasuke's distress as he turned the jewelry over in his hands. It won't do any harm, but it will help keep your brother at bay. Just in case. The doorbell rang, but Sasuke didn't pay attention. He was still sitting on the stairs, clutching the medallion in his hands. The bell rang again, only now the Uchiha raised his head. This is who came here so early. The guy was indignant in his mind, slowly trudging towards the door. The search for headache pills had completely faded into the background. As soon as the lock clicked, cold paws of dampness crept into the room. Sasuke wrapped himself tighter in the blanket, and it seemed that even his hair began to move from the cold. The rain continued to pour down in buckets. Sticking his nose out the door, Uchiha was speechless. Tsubaki stood on the threshold and smiled sweetly, although the guy was ready to wring her neck. What do you want? After yesterday, he was no longer surprised by anything, neither by how she knew his number, nor by how she knew his address. You're so cute when you're angry, Tsubaki chuckled, throwing the charred cigarette aside. I can't wait to see you explode with indignation. I thought I asked, what do you want? Uchiha was starting to lose patience. Everything had been going wrong since the morning, and Sasuke couldn't organize his thoughts, which was even more annoying. I told you yesterday that I would come. Nakahara propped her side up with her hand, and a bright red t-shirt with a skull design appeared from under her jacket. You look like a punk, Sasuke noted, looking at her outfit. Do you have something against it? Tsubaki narrowed her eyes, but immediately pushed the guy away from the door. Let me pass. Uchiha sighed heavily and reached to close the door, almost hitting the nose of the guy dragging a heavy sports bag. Who is this? Sasuke was indignant, drilling into Nakahara's back. He had already regretted getting involved with her. Sasuke is Shikamaru, Shikamaru is Sasuke. I hope you get along. Tsubaki didn't even turn around, looking at the old building. I doubt it, Uchiha muttered, looking his new acquaintance over from head to toe. Shikamaru was the same age as Sasuke, only his look was more tired. He was built well for his age, although there was a certain laziness in his movements. His dark brown hair was gathered in a high ponytail at the back of his head. You look at me like you're seeing me for the first time in your life. Shikamaru grinned, and Sasuke stumbled over his thoughts. That's right, he said quietly. Actually, we've known each other for 3 years already. Shikamaru corrected. How is that? Uchiha didn't understand. His brain had completely refused to work since the morning. We met at Uzumaki's birthday party. The guy explained. Although, you weren't up to it then, Sakura was getting the better of you. Sasuke tried to remember that memorable birthday, after which he suffered from a hangover for another week under Itachi's mockery, but the person of Shikamaru remained a mystery. I'm glad you have a lot in common, but work can't wait. Nakahara interrupted the mental storm. Sasuke, is your brother home? He's probably asleep, Uchiha said uncertainly, the desire to sleep beginning to return. Check. Shika, let's start from the entrance, while the rain is not too heavy. Reluctantly, Uchiha went upstairs and knocked on his brother's room, but there was no answer. Sasuke let out a tired breath and cast a sympathetic glance at the door of his room. The boy unbearably wanted to sleep, but he also couldn't leave the guests unattended, destroying the house. He was convinced of this when he went down. Shikamaru unbuttoned his sports jacket, filled to the brim with electronics, miniature wireless cameras sending data via Wi-Fi to a remote storage device, thousands of different sensors, no bigger than a pushpin. The guy enthusiastically set to work, throwing open the front door and letting in cold, damp air into the house, and began frantically tearing off the roughly nailed board above the threshold. "Hey, what are you doing?" Sasuke was indignant, quickly running down the steps. "Do you want the guardians of antiquity to drag us through the courts?" "Oh, come on," Shika said lazily, "and I thought you liked living in a wreck." Sasuke frowned, quickly deciding what to throw at Shirku, preferably something heavy. "Calm down," Shikamaru spoke again, seeing that the owner of the house was in a bad mood. "I know one restorer, he owes me. He will do the repairs and solve all the problems with the authorities." "Shika, get to work," Tsubaki shouted at him. "And be careful there." "Whatever you say, boss." The guy chuckled and returned to his work. Sasuke let out a tired sigh and trudged into the kitchen. His head hurt unbearably, and the boy was going to do everything he could to improve his condition. He opened the refrigerator and, finding a small bottle of mineral water, pressed it to his forehead, sitting down on a chair. It got easier, but not much. Nakahara came after him and looked with concern at the Uchiha's pink cheeks. "Are you sick?" she asked, coming very close. "No. It's just a headache." The guy waved it off, leaning back in his chair. "It'll pass soon." But Tsubaki had a different opinion and did not listen to his excuses. She grabbed the Uchiha's head with her hand and pulled him towards her, touching his forehead with her lips. Sasuke instantly flushed. The girl only smiled. "You're acting like a virgin on her first date." The brunette gave her a displeased look. "Sasuke, learn to relax, otherwise you'll get wrinkles. You have a fever, where's your first aid kit?" The Uchiha waved his head vaguely somewhere behind the refrigerator. Tsubaki quickly found a cabinet hanging on the wall filled with medical preparations. Soon she was standing in front of Sasuke again, a handful of pills in her hand. Sasuke tilted his head to the side, examining her carefully. "What?" Nakahara didn't understand, squinting her eyes. "It's just that you look like our mother, I realized it when we met, only your eyes are different." The brunette drawled, quite quietly, but Tsubaki heard him perfectly well and smiled warmly. He took the medicine and immediately put it all in his mouth, washing it down with water and wincing at the unpleasant taste on his tongue. "Now go to sleep," Nakahara said in a serious, no-nonsense tone. "This will take time, when we're done, I'll wake you up." Sasuke didn't argue, just nodded his head and trudged up to the second floor. 2 hours later, Uchiha was awakened by a knock on the door. Before Sasuke could open it, it opened, letting Tsubaki into the room. Shika remained standing on the threshold, leaning his back against the doorframe. "Are you all there?" the brunette asked, rubbing his sleepy eyes. His head had stopped hurting, but sleep had firmly taken over his consciousness, and the guy had to make incredible efforts not to pass out. "Your brother's door is locked," Tsubaki spread her hands, looking around Sasuke's room. It was not very large, with a sloping ceiling that smoothly merged into the wall, in the niche of which there was a closet. A large bed was against the opposite wall, a nightstand and shelves with books above the bed. Old wallpaper on the walls had posters with images of characters from computer games. Nothing in this room was different from the rooms of his peers. Tsubaki wondered if she had once been like this. Although the girl was only 2 years older than Sasuke, it seemed as if a whole lifetime separated them. "Itachi always locks the door and only he has the key," Uchiha answered, not taking his eyes off the brunette. "Why such precautions?" Shika chuckled, finally entering the room and closing the door behind him. In his hands were several cameras and a couple of sensors. "It's an old habit," Sasuke said vaguely, "since childhood." But Shika was not entirely satisfied with such a short answer. Uchiha sighed heavily, but decided to tell. "I was little, and I missed Itachi a lot when he was in school. I always played in his room, turning it into a dump. Until one day I gutted all his textbooks and notebooks with homework. Naturally, I got a scolding from my mother, but after that Itachi started locking the room with a key. And you were a headstrong boy. Shika chuckled, yawning sweetly, so that tears came to his eyes. Sasuke wanted to repeat his example, but he fought this desire. We need to install cameras in his room, Tsubaki said seriously, opening the window and looking at possible entry points. The rain was pouring down, drumming on the windowsill. This is especially important. There's no balcony if you're going to climb in through the window, Sasuke noted. I see, the girl responded without turning around. But I'll get there and open the door from the inside. Wait. Sasuke didn't have time to stop her. An old wooden beam, no more than 2 centimeters wide, was nailed to the window at a height of 20 centimeters below the window, but that didn't stop Tsubaki. Despite all the persuasion, the girl began her way to the neighboring window. The distance was not close and the guys, with bated breath, leaning out to their waists, watched her every step. It took Nakahara a little more than half an hour to cover the distance of 5 meters from window to window. Having stopped, she grabbed the frame with her hand and began to pick at the sashes with a knife so that the latch came out of its grooves. The work was almost finished when the window suddenly opened. Tsubaki couldn't hold on, and her hand slipped off the wet wood. Sasuke closed his eyes, and Shika screamed. But the girl was caught by the hand and dragged into the room. Having caught her breath and recovered from the shock she had experienced, Tsubaki looked up at her savior. Itachi Uchiha stood before her. She recognized him perfectly, but upon closer inspection, the guy turned out to be much more beautiful. Beautiful as God. The comparison itself suggested itself, burning the brain in scarlet letters. The elder Uchiha returned, but the boys, engrossed in their observation, did not notice it. He smiled slightly, with only the corners of his lips, examining the girl. This is the first time I've seen girls burst into my room like this. The pleasant baritone caused a wave of goosebumps on the brunette's body, and her cheeks, against her will, became covered in a blush. Sasuke looked at his brother with wide eyes and couldn't understand whether he was dreaming or not. Itachi believed him. He believed the absurd nonsense that Shikamaru was telling about a stupid bet and a loss that became the reason for the invasion of the elder Uchiha's abode. Sasuke would never have believed such a stupid lie, but he expected it from Itachi the least. The group filed down the stairs to the kitchen, where Itachi promised to make everyone some hot chocolate. After climbing the walls in the pouring rain, Tsubaki had started sneezing and was now looking sympathetically at Sasuke, still wrapped in a blanket. Sasuke, stop sulking, she whispered in his ear. Everything's okay. I don't believe he believed this nonsense. The younger Uchiha was indignant. This is actually nonsense. You know, it's easier to believe in a crazy lie. After all, when people lie, they want to look smarter than they are. The brunette said instructively, sneezing loudly on the last word. Be healthy, Tsubaki-san. The elder's voice was heard from the kitchen. Thank you, I will definitely be there. Even the girl's face changed. A feverish gleam appeared in her eyes, and her cheeks turned pink. Sasuke only chuckled discontentedly. But the girl quickly returned to the conversation that interested her. Did you tell your brother about Professor Yoshiro, and that he suspended you from classes? Are you kidding me? The guy frowned. How would that look, in your opinion? You know, Nii-san, I was suspended from classes because I told the professor that there was evil spirits inside you. It's really stupid. But it's for the best, I already have an idea. Nakahara smiled. An idea of what? The guy asked again, but received no answer. Sitting at the kitchen table, holding steaming mugs of scalding chocolate and melted marshmallows, a friendly atmosphere reigned. Itachi asked how Sasuke and Shikamaru met, and the boy launched into memories of Uzumaki's momentous 16th birthday. It was strange that Sasuke remembered everything Shika had said and could not find fault, but he stubbornly could not dig up the boy himself in his memory. Itachi himself smiled a couple of times, recalling how bad Sasuke had felt after that grandiose drinking bout. Tsubaki laughed, and the younger Uchiha darkened before his eyes, feeling like a laughingstock. Afterwards, Nakahara took over the conversation. Itachi-san, please forgive us for such behavior. She began, looking the guy straight in the eyes. These bottomless ink pools attracted her gaze. We were working on a project, and decided to have some fun. We didn't think it would turn out like this. It's okay, it happens to everyone. Uchiha smiled. With you? Sasuke said seriously, but his brother didn't pay attention to him. What kind of project? If it's not a secret, of course. The elder one asked. Oh, it's just nonsense. Tsubaki waved it off. There's a professor at the university, Yoshiro. Sasuke probably told me about it. So, he gave the students practical work. Sasuke got to simulate pseudosci activity at home. So we're preparing. Are you helping my brother, Tsubaki-san? Itachi listened to her with interest, not taking his eyes off her. I'm so embarrassed, she blushed. It's just that Tsubaki, I'm 3 years younger than you, Itachi-san. Then just Itachi and let's not return to this topic. Uchiha winked. Sasuke's jaw met the surface of the table. His brother was flirting with Nakahara? He couldn't even imagine such a thing in his worst nightmare, although he couldn't deny that Tsubaki was beautiful. But Itachi, a completely cold person to everyone, simply couldn't get it together. Is it just me or are they acting like they're on a date? Shika, who was sitting next to Sasuke, asked quietly. I'm afraid it doesn't seem that way, Sasuke answered just as quietly. After another half-hour of casual conversation, Tsubaki and Shikamaru finally got ready to leave, which Sasuke was incredibly happy about. Itachi walked them to the door and kindly invited them to come over whenever they had free time. The leaden clouds, tormenting the city with pouring rain, finally crawled away, letting sunlight onto the soaked streets. The puddles were still there, and cold drops were still falling from the roofs, but now they were iridescent, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow, like crystals. Sasuke took a deep breath of the pleasant warm air and blissfully closed his eyes. A fleeting smile was reflected on his lips, as if it was afraid to seem real. The guy slept well. For the first time in many years, he was not haunted by nightmares and maddening fear. Pills that work miracles. This morning seemed truly magical to him, filled with invisible charm. That fleeting feeling that overwhelms with warm sensations, ready to break out of the boundaries of nature. For the first time, he loved people and did not pay attention to their fuss around his person. Sasuke. Thin heels clicked furiously on the sidewalk, approaching him at a furious speed. The guy turned around abruptly, and Tsubaki ran into him, not having time to stop in time. With all her strength, she slammed her shoulder into his chest and, unable to hold on, began to fall on her high heels. The Uchiha quickly reacted, grabbing her by the waist and pressing her to himself. Nakahara blinked her long eyelashes, looking at him with frightened eyes, but soon she was able to breathe calmly, realizing that her head remained intact. How can you run in such heels? The guy began his instructive lecture, but the girl only snorted in displeasure. She wrapped her arm around his neck. What are you doing? Sasuke was perplexed, looking into her eyes. Sakura is watching, she explained briefly, nodding her head behind the guy's back. Are you making fun of her? Aren't you ashamed, Tsubaki? But the guy said these words with a certain amount of sarcasm. He himself didn't mind playing out such a performance in front of the admirer who had been pestering him since middle school. So, what did you want? So, Nakahara began, moving away from the guy who continued on his way to the university, now walking next to him. We still haven't installed the cameras and I need your help. In what exactly? Sasuke remembered the brunette's feat of breaking into her brother's room yesterday, and now he least of all wanted to follow her example. Tomorrow is an important day at the university, Tsubaki said, looking at her feet, carefully choosing where to step. There will be no classes. I want you to meet someone. What does this have to do with it? Uchiha didn't understand. The plan is quite complicated and I will explain it to you tonight. Will you come to my place after class? Tsubaki clearly did not want to talk about such things in front of strangers. Sasuke nodded in agreement, casting a sideways glance at her. Can you explain one thing to me? He began, looking closely at the girl's face. Which one? She answered readily. What was that yesterday? Were you flirting with my brother? Who? Me. Nakahara blushed with indignation. What nonsense are you talking? I'm ashamed to hear such ridiculous accusations. Well, yes. Sasuke agreed. It wasn't you who was blushing like a schoolgirl yesterday. You know what? The girl stopped abruptly, grabbing him by the collar. I was wildly ashamed that I got caught like that. Do you think this is a normal thing for me? I think so. Uchiha smiled, watching her angrily draw her eyebrows together. You liked him, right? You don't have to answer, I can see it. You're boring me. The girl flared up even more, turning sharply on her heels. See you in the evening. Sasuke didn't answer, he just stood there and smiled at the retreating figure. What's the plan? Sasuke asked from the doorway, barely closing the door to Professor Yoshiro's reception room behind him. Wait a second. Tsubaki interrupted him, gathering the papers scattered on the table into a folder and putting them into the folder. Having checked that she had not missed anything, the girl rose from her seat and headed towards the professor's office. Their quiet voices could be heard from behind the closed door. Professor Yoshiro, Nakahara said, the speech for your presentation is ready. Finally. The man said irritably. You should have done this yesterday. Sorry, but this kind of work is not part of my job description, she snapped. What is included in your duties and what is not, it is up to me to decide. The professor was indignant, throwing the folder on the table. I am not even mentioning the fact that you do not do your job, you always disappear somewhere during the working day. When did that happen? Tsubaki asked coldly. Was it when you went on a drinking binge and didn't leave your office for almost a month? And how is it my fault that I didn't bring you a hangover cure? That's it. Yoshiro exploded. Go home. And don't be late tomorrow, got it? Of course, it's my job. Tsubaki left the chief's office, taking her jacket from the back of the chair. Without saying anything, she walked out into the spacious hallway, Sasuke following behind. I'm sorry, he can be unbearable sometimes, Tsubaki said quietly, still trying to calm her nerves. What do you have to apologize for? Sasuke shrugged. He should be ashamed. I would have said worse to him. You still haven't answered, what's the plan? Here. Nakahara handed him a piece of paper folded in 4. Be at this address tomorrow at 8. They will be waiting for you. Uchiha looked at the note carefully and snorted contemptuously. A mental hospital? Don't be afraid, it's not about you, Tsubaki reassured him. There is an interesting patient, or rather a female patient, living in this hospital now, you'll be interested to see. Shika will be there to meet you, he'll introduce you to the right people and give him the keys to the house. Why? Sasuke didn't understand. Maybe you want to climb out the window yourself? Tsubaki ran her hand over her face, as if shaking off traces of fatigue. Listen, Shika is a master at this, otherwise I wouldn't work with him. You don't trust him, I see you don't trust anyone, so I ask you to visit the hospital. You'll discover many new things. What about Itachi? Sasuke asked. I'll take care of him, the girl said confidently. So you liked it, Sasuke concluded. Look, keep your guesses to yourself, okay? Nakora was losing her patience. I've had a hard day as it is, and tomorrow will be even worse. So, what's special tomorrow? Why were classes cancelled? Uchiha didn't let up. Professor Yoshiro is holding his annual program about exposing charlatans who pose as mediums and the like. Only this time he'll hold a spiritualistic seance at the end of the show. It's all nonsense and childish, really, but I need to keep an eye on the equipment. And this is a good opportunity to check your brother for waves. Don't go on like that. Sasuke interrupted. I still don't understand what you're saying. Okay. I need to be at the mental hospital at 8 and give Shikamaru the keys? Exactly. Tsubaki confirmed. The wall clock quietly clicked its hands, measuring the smooth running of fleeting time. Anyone who has ever expected anything exciting in their life knows how slowly these tense minutes drag on. But time does not change its running, it is immutable, it is only a game of our mind, shrouded in fear, scrolling through hundreds of different options in our heads. Sasuke hates the night, despises this invisible time when the rest of the people on the planet sleep peacefully in their warm beds, and sticky sweat appears on his back, causing the thin flannel t-shirt to stick unpleasantly to his body, restricting his movements and giving a feeling of immobility. He is already constrained, his mind is closed behind a strong gate and even he cannot break through it. As if protecting happy memories from the fear gnawing from within, the brain stubbornly refuses to recreate these moments in memory. Sasuke presses himself against the wall, pulling the blanket over his head. Once. 2. 3. 4. The seconds drag on painfully slowly, like viscous molasses. He can no longer cope with his fears. His hands are shaking desperately, and a sedative tablet falls out of the package, past his palm, hits the floor and rolls under the bed. The Uchiha freezes in indecision, wondering what to do next, when the long-awaited chime of the clock is heard from the first floor, and immediately after that the door handle turns in the next room. Soft, barely perceptible footsteps rush down the hall, past his bedroom, and down. The front door slammed. Too quickly, as if something had gone wrong in the well-oiled machine, or Sasuke had been out of touch for so long that he had missed everything. Cold fingers reach for the nightstand, feeling for the phone. Quickly sorting through incoming calls. Fortunately, Sasuke does not have a habit of deleting numbers from the list. The short beeps are too loud on his eardrum, but Sasuke waits for someone to answer, and 5 seconds later a voice answers on the other end of the line. "Tsubaki, are you asleep?" His voice sounds alien, completely unfamiliar, like a child's, scared and trembling. "No, Sasuke, I'm not sleeping." Nakahara answers, although you can hear her yawning into the phone. "Did something happen?" "No. Just..." Sasuke doesn't dare say the words that prompted him to call so late. He's ashamed to admit it even to himself, and even more so to her. "Let's meet." Tsubaki decides for him, understanding what caused the guy's excitement. "I'll wait there, in an hour." Sasuke hangs up and jumps off the bed, quickly running across the room to the closet, taking out sweatpants and a sweatshirt. It's cold outside, a frosty freshness blows through the crack in the window. The Uchiha quickly changes his clothes and goes downstairs. His steps are so fast, as if he is afraid to stay in one place longer than he should, as if his life depended on it. Jumping into his sneakers, not even thinking about tying them, the guy rips his jacket off the hanger, breaking the loop, and disappears into the darkness of the night. It's still too early, but he'd rather wait there than stay in this house for even a second longer. A gust of powerful wind bends the trees, making the old boards of the building creak under the pressure, and it seems that the house is laughing at the running boy. For the first time, he is afraid to stay home alone. Chapter 7 The cold wind ruffled his disheveled hair, tangling it. Sasuke knew he would spend a couple of hours trying to untangle the bird's nest on his head, frantically pulling out his hair, but he didn't care. Standing near the gates of the Central Park, he peered into the darkness, trying to make out every movement. This is what happens when our imagination paints too vivid images. When it seems that someone is walking around the house, although there is no one else in it except you, when the wood creaking under the pressure of the wind becomes like the sound of clanking metal, sharpened for your soul, when a leaky faucet, methodically counting the drops, is like the sound of clanking chains. This happened to Sasuke often. Old fears experienced in deep childhood did not go away, they just dulled with time, turning into paranoia in the dark night. Behind every tree and bush there was danger, still invisible and intangible, but Uchiha was ready to swear that he was being watched. He felt this prickly, unpleasant to the point of trembling look on his back. Sasuke spun around in place, as if wanting to shake off this obsessive feeling, but it did not work. Closing his eyes, the boy took a deep breath, trying to calm his shattered nerves. It was just his imagination, nothing more. It was playing a cruel game with the subconscious, dragging out all the most secret fears. There were no ghosts, just like the devil, just like God, these were just stupid fairy tales. There was a logical explanation for everything. Science had already opened the eyes of ordinary people to the wonders of the world. The bright stars that lit up the sky as a second sun during the early Christian era were just meteorites, dozens of which rained down from space onto our small planet. Sasuke would believe in aliens and time travel more than in God. He didn't care what his brother did at night, but there was a logical explanation for that too, clearly not the one Nakahara was trying to convince him of. A sudden rustle caught his attention, and Sasuke froze, his nerves taut as strings, threatening to snap at any moment. He turned slowly, exhaled tiredly, lowered his head and relaxed. Tsubaki was standing behind him in pajamas and a warm jacket. She didn't care at all how she looked, and it seemed like Sasuke had dragged her out of bed. "Let's go for a walk," the girl suggested. She didn't ask any questions, she just looked at him. Maybe she understood what was going on in his soul, and Sasuke was grateful. They walked slowly along the paths, paved with tiles, illuminated by the dim light of lanterns, skirting the trees and leading into the very depths of the overgrown park. "Can't sleep?" Tsubaki finally spoke up after half an hour of complete silence. Sasuke shook his head absently, ruffling the hair on the back of his head. "Sedatives don't work anymore." He sighed tiredly. Tsubaki only nodded her head, making it clear that she understood him. "I'm tired. I want to collapse into a den, like a bear for the winter, and sleep until I get bored. I'm sure that won't happen anytime soon." "Then why are you here and not in bed like all normal people?" Tsubaki asked. "Ask me what's easier." Sasuke chuckled. "I'm exhausted, but at night I get my second wind." "So you're an L," the girl said thoughtfully, carefully examining the intricate pattern of the tiles under her feet. "I'm a fucking vampire," Sasuke laughed. "Who never sleeps?" Nakahara didn't respond to his joke. She froze in place, tugging the boy's arm, forcing him to stop. The wind tore the gray leaves from the trees. Autumn had burst into London too suddenly, covering the streets with a chilly freshness. Sasuke looked at the girl, who did not move, but looked around, in confusion. "What's the matter?" Sasuke himself didn't understand why he was speaking in a whisper, but the old fears had returned. And now he followed her example, turning his head in all directions. "Don't you hear?" the girl asked just as quietly, turning her head sharply to the right, as if she had singled out from the entire range of sounds the one that had caught her attention. Sasuke tried desperately to hear, but could detect nothing but the howling of the wind. Pulling his hood down, he looked at the girl again, intending to ask another question, but she covered his mouth with her hand, not allowing him to utter a sound. The guy felt how tense and collected she was, as if they were about to flee. "Don't move," she whispered with just her lips. "And be quiet, most importantly, be quiet." Uchiha tried to turn his head to see what Tsubaki was staring at. But he couldn't. She was holding him tightly. Panic was starting to build up again, and Sasuke knew he was about to start screaming. He shrugged his shoulders in displeasure, making it clear he wasn't going to play by her rules. "He was watching you," Tsubaki whispered, trying to explain to Sasuke what was happening as quietly and calmly as possible. "You felt it, right? You couldn't help but notice." The guy nodded his head. "Sasuke, now slowly, I repeat, very slowly, without any sudden movements, retreat into the shadows." Tsubaki instructed, continuing to look behind the brunette's back. "Without unnecessary noise, keep yourself in hand. As soon as you find yourself in the shadows, run as fast as you can towards the cemetery. The ground there is illuminated, he won't go there." She removed her thin hand from his lips and looked into his eyes, trying to understand if he understood her correctly. But Sasuke had too many questions to leave them unanswered. "Why would he follow me?" he whispered in her ear. "He feels threatened by you. You called him yesterday, which means you know the truth. He can't allow this, and he will try to get rid of you. Go away," the girl firmly stated, pushing him forward. Sasuke didn't argue. His legs felt like lead, and every step was a struggle, but he moved forward slowly. Soon the saving shadow was just a few steps away. Uchiha heard a distinct rustling sound, and in one jump he found himself behind a tree. He looked back. Tsubaki was still standing in the middle of the path, and further, red eyes were looking at him from the darkness. A chill ran down his skin. Sasuke felt like it was looking at him, like a hidden predator. Uchiha swallowed the lump that had risen in his throat, taking another step back, when the red eyes darted forward at a furious speed. Nakahara turned to him, only managing to shout "run," before his brother's clawed hand came crashing down on her head. Tsubaki fell to the tiles, which were stained with scarlet. Sasuke took off and disappeared into the night. Sasuke spent the whole night among the tombstones, pacing back and forth. He never understood the informals who spent their nights in the cemetery, but now he would be glad if he met at least one living person in this kingdom of death and sorrow. But there was silence and peace all around, as it should be in the last refuge of souls. Exhausted, closer to dawn, he leaned his back against the old crypt, erected 300 years ago. He even managed to doze off, despite the absurdity of it. Sasuke felt calm here. Around 5 in the morning, he was pulled out of the clutches of oblivion by a phone call, which echoed menacingly throughout the cemetery, trying to wake up all the dead. Sasuke jumped in surprise, but answered right away. "Haven't you forgotten that you have a meeting today?" Tsubaki's voice was completely calm, which couldn't be said about Uchiha. He was mentally exhausted, going crazy from his own thoughts and ignorance. "How are you?" he asked, leaving her words unanswered. "What, were you worried?" Nakahara laughed, but quickly calmed down. "It's fine. A small scratch, but it's not important. Let's go home and change. No one will wait for you. Just don't forget." The girl switched off. Uchiha rose from the cold ground, shivering. Fog was settling over London, thick milk enveloping the roads and houses, dropping cold drops on his face. Sasuke found himself at home rather quickly. He almost ran along the awakening streets. His clothes were all dirty with earth and dirt, which he wanted to get rid of as quickly as possible. The house was quiet, only a partial boot print was showing off red on the old boards. The guy sighed heavily, realizing where the blood on his brother's shoes could have come from, who was now sleeping carefree and completely unaware that he almost killed Tsubaki, and he liked her. You don't need to be a genius, you just need to know the elder Uchiha well to read his thoughts and intentions, and Sasuke did an excellent job of it. Pulling off the dirty sweatshirt, which would end up in the trash anyway, since the Uchiha would never wear it again, he wiped the stain on the floor and headed to the bathroom to wash off the graveyard dirt. It seemed to him that his hair, clothes, and skin were saturated with the smell of decay. Of course everything was wrong and Sasuke smelled of dirt, but these are already problems of our imagination. 2 hours later, all this time soaking in the bathroom, Sasuke left the house, closing the door behind him, taking a bag of ruined clothes, which went on a trip through the trash can, leaving his brother a note on the refrigerator, attached with a single magnet, that he had urgent business and would be late. Chapter 8 Leaving the spacious interior of the regular bus, Sasuke quickly headed towards a small diner. The small, cozy establishment greeted him with friendly faces of workers and a pleasant aroma of freshly baked buns with jam. There were still 20 minutes left before the appointed meeting, and the building of the psychiatric clinic was located across the road, hidden behind a monolithic gray concrete fence covered with barbed wire. After standing in a short line, Sasuke ordered a large glass of strong tea. This was what he liked about England, reminding him of his native Japan, a country that drinks liters of tea a day. It was hard to find coffee here, and it wasn't necessary. The guy never liked coffee. This invigorating drink didn't invigorate him, on the contrary, it gave him a certain confusion and fatigue, making his hands shake. Tea was a different matter. But in Japan they drink green tea, much stronger, so 3 bags of Earl Grey went into a large paper cup, at his request. Having paid and about to leave, Uchiha crashed into someone's chest. The glass of tea fell from his hands, spilling dark brown liquid on the wooden floor. Sighing resignedly, Sasuke raised his head to the yawning Shikamaru, intending to incinerate him with his gaze, but the guy remained impenetrable. "What are you sneaking up on?" Sasuke muttered discontentedly, stepping over the glass, heading towards the exit of the diner, not being too lazy to push the guy with his shoulder to clear his way. "You're not a talkative person," Shika drawled, following him like a dog on a leash, step by step. "I had a rough night." Sasuke frowned even more, trying to get rid of the unwanted pursuit, but it didn't work out well. The heavy door opened slightly, jingling its bell, letting in a group of young girls who were chattering tirelessly about the chilly weather and the price of umbrellas. Sasuke listened to their conversation with special attention, only because he did not want to hear the words of the guy following him. Having slipped through the closing door, Uchiha found himself on the street. A gust of strong wind almost blew him off his feet, raising a pile of newspapers and fallen leaves, swirling them in a miniature semblance of a tornado. The bus stop was filled with people patiently waiting for their transport, wrapped in warm jackets and sweaters. The brunette winced once again, feeling the touch of a cold wind on his cheek. "Hey, can you hear me?" Shikamaru's voice burst into his consciousness, and Sasuke regretted that he couldn't switch off at will. It would be much easier to live if he were, say, a simple home computer, and not a person made of flesh and blood. And in general, how much easier it is for devices whose work is strictly regulated by the labor code, and then disconnecting from the network and blissful rest. Rest, how Sasuke wanted to fall into bed and sleep the rest of the day, but no, it was important to Tsubaki that he drag himself to the middle of nowhere at the crack of dawn, carrying out her stupid errands. Sasuke, come back. Uchiha turned his clouded gaze to the boy who had become tiresome to him. What kind of merits were they punishing him with? What had he done wrong in his life? Sasuke? Shikamaru carefully examined his face for signs of life. I need the keys. Are you going to give them to me or what? The keys. Uchiha drawled, returning to the boring gray reality, intertwined from monotonous days that were no different from each other. True, diluted with eventful nights, performed by his brother. At least something. Not without difficulty, he found a bunch of keys in pockets filled with unnecessary trash. Among which were even candies, obviously stored here for more than a year, because the paint on the wrappers had long since worn off, not even leaving traces of the previous color. Uchiha handed them to the waiting guy. Shika turned them over in his hands with interest, examining the keychain in the form of a devil with a green unidentified nastiness crawling out of his eyes. Funny. Shika drawled, putting the keys in his pocket. Let's go, the Holy Father won't wait long. Shikamaru took a couple of steps, but Sasuke pulled him back. What? Priest, did I hear right? No, Sasuke, you got it right. Shika saw confusion on his face for the first time, not pompous arrogance, and absorbed these emotions like a sponge. I even envy you. I would have seen it myself, but I have things to do. Without another word, Shikamaru quickly ran across the road, almost getting hit by a small car, but managed to jump out of the way at the last moment. Sasuke watched his antics in the middle of the roadway with undisguised disappointment. People are idiots. Life teaches them nothing. Having waited for the green light, he, along with the other pedestrians, crossed the zebra crossing, to Shikamaru's dissatisfied snorts. The building of the old mental hospital smelled of dampness and medicine, and the nauseating smell of bleach immediately hit his nose, as if it had been poured here from floor to ceiling. Sasuke winced, covering his nose with his sleeve, listening to the echoes of his steps reflected off the walls. It was too quiet, the Uchiha even thought that everyone had died. Shikamaru walked ahead quite briskly, pointing the way, feeling at ease, which could not be said about the younger Uchiha. Sasuke, of course, understood that in the future he would have to work in a similar place, but it seemed that this would happen so far away that it was not worth bothering. Shikamaru stopped at a shabby door, painted white like everything else in this shabby establishment. There was no handle, and Uchiha was completely confused, trying to figure out how they would get inside. The door opened by itself, Shika didn't even have time to knock. In the resulting opening appeared the head of an elderly woman, with disheveled hair in a brightly colored robe. Well, finally, she muttered, stepping aside and letting the guys pass, couldn't you have gone faster? Sorry, Shika responded, stretching lazily, I ran as best I could. He ran away. The woman continued to grumble. As if I had nothing better to do than watch over you, I haven't washed the floors on the second floor yet. And who is this? The cleaning lady, and apparently it was her, had finally finished venting her anger on Shirku and now turned her attention to the Uchiha. This is Sasuke, Shikamaru introduced, waving his hand towards the brunette. He's replacing Tsubaki today. So he's new, then. The woman grumbled, making her way forward, where several more similar doors awaited. Why can't he stay home? At least he won't be turned inside out, otherwise I don't need extra hours of work. All sorts of people walk around here, trampling, and I have to clean up. She complained a lot about her job and the ungrateful doctors, but no one heard her. The last door was behind him, locked, and Sasuke finally found himself in a corridor with wards. Screams and groans were heard from everywhere. Shika quickly led him through the intricate labyrinths, stopping near one ward, where a priest and a doctor, judging by his white coat, were waiting for them. The doctor was already old, his head was covered with silver, but he looked quite cheerful, fit and neat. The priest turned out to be a young man, about 27, 30 years old, brown-haired, with a pleasant appearance. So this is what he is like, Sasuke. The priest smiled, examining the Uchiha. When Tsubaki spoke about the young guy, I imagined someone completely different. You exceeded my expectations. Sasuke just shrugged. He didn't like this guy, and his appearance or rank didn't matter, it was just that inside he had a barrier to communicating with him. I am Father John, the priest continued, this is Dr. Edwards. Hello. Uchiha exhaled sadly, turning to the doctor, who responded with a nod. Well, I'll go. Shika waved his hand and disappeared into the corridors. So, the doctor suddenly spoke, addressing Uchiha, you will be interested to know why we called a priest. Medicine in our time is capable of curing almost all mental disorders, but there are some where we are powerless. The patient, a young girl of 15, is 8 months pregnant. Based on the symptoms, the attending physician diagnosed a personality disorder and assigned her here. We undertook treatment in full, but the therapy did not give any effect, as a result of which, we decided to turn to the church for a consultation. Wait. Sasuke's brain, exhausted by sleepless nights, did not immediately grasp the information, and he had to strain all his strength. So this is a common practice for your clinic? Absolutely. The doctor nodded in agreement. And, are there any results? Uchiha still didn't believe it. More than you can imagine. The doctor smiled. Now you'll see everything for yourself. And also, it's better to keep quiet, don't talk to her or him, it will be better that way. Sasuke nodded in agreement, making it clear that he accepted the rules of what he considered a crazy idea. Dr. Edwards opened the door to the ward for them, stepping aside. Itachi stretched, looking at the whistling kettle on the stove, indignantly insisting that it had boiled long ago. The elder Uchiha turned over all the shelves once again, but there was still no coffee. Sasuke only drinks tea, a huge number of different varieties of which cluttered the entire cabinet. Sighing resignedly, he still had to settle for a replacement. The bag of aromatic drink flew into the cup, generously poured with boiling water. He was tired, he didn't even have the strength to move around the house, let alone go to work. His whole body ached as if he had been kicked all night long. His tired gaze slid to the refrigerator, picking out the note his brother had left. I wonder what business he has at such an early hour, the brunette thought, turning a piece of paper in his hands, covered in a clumsy, sweeping handwriting, which made it clear that the writer was in a hurry. A knock on the door distracted him from his intense thoughts, and Itachi almost dropped his cup. Putting it aside, he walked with a slow, proud step to greet the uninvited guest. Tsubaki shivered from the piercing gust of wind, the weather seemed to have rebelled and did not want to give the inhabitants of the metropolis even a hint of warmth. Uchiha's gaze lazily slid over her figure, as if expecting an explanation, noting the cheek covered with a bandage. Sorry to disturb you, the girl began, trying to tidy up her wind-blown hair. Is Sasuke home? Sasuke? Itachi thought, finally waking up and cursing his brother with all the obscene expressions he knew. Why was he so worked up? No, Sasuke left. He has urgent matters. He shrugged, as if he himself doubted what he had said. Tsubaki sighed resignedly, as if the world was ready to open up right under her feet. Maybe I can help? Itachi unexpectedly suggested, clearly understanding that the brunette would leave if he didn't hold her back. I don't know. She spoke hesitantly, but hope flickered in her eyes. I feel awkward, it's just that Sasuke promised to help, but he probably forgot. It's a mere trifle and I'm capable of. It's not worth it. Itachi interrupted her flow of phrases. It's not difficult for me. Besides, I have absolutely nothing else to do. I would be immensely grateful to you, Itachi, you are my savior. The girl exclaimed. Uchiha lowered his eyes guiltily, like a naughty child. How strange it must have looked from the outside, but the brunette did not think about it at that moment, his whole being was jubilant. Itachi suggested that she wait in the house so as not to freeze outside while he got ready. Although she did not have to wait long. A couple of minutes later they left the Victorian-era dwelling, leaving the mug to cool forlornly on the kitchen table. The university building greeted them with its unusual silence and emptiness. There were no students to be seen anywhere, scurrying along the vast corridors waiting for the next lectures. A small line of respectably dressed professors crowded near the entrance to the public auditorium. It was there that Tsubaki dragged the Uchiha. Squeezing through the crowd, the girl confidently walked towards a small utility room behind the stage with a podium hidden in the corner. "May I ask what such a society is for?" Itachi asked, having maintained a stubborn silence until now. "That's complete nonsense," Tsubaki waved her hand. "Professor Yoshiro gives an annual lecture on how we're being fooled based on our ignorance. It's a ritual of sorts. The same people come year after year, listen, applaud, and leave, while I sit here and watch the monitors. And what interesting things should happen in them?" Itachi clearly liked the prospect of spending a few hours alone with her. "Who knows?" She shrugged. "I have to write down any hesitation. That's why I asked Sasuke to help. I can't keep track of everyone at once." "Oh, that's just an impossible task." Uchiha grinned. "I'm just bored sitting here alone," Tsubaki admitted honestly, innocently batting her eyelashes. "You won't be offended and leave me to be torn apart by old technology, will you?" "What kind of man will I be after this?" Uchiha continued to smile, supporting the game, "if I abandon a defenseless girl to her fate at such a difficult time in her life." "Thank you." Finally, a smile lit up her face, pure and naive, just like a child's, which made her want to hug the whole world. Itachi took off his jacket, throwing it on the back of a worn chair, examining the equipment from the last century. He hadn't seen such rarities in a long time. "What is the essence of today's performance?" he asked again, trying to understand whether it was worth paying attention to the words coming from the stage. "About mysticism, ghosts, and hypnosis. Lots of things, but it's not interesting. The most important will be at the end." "You intrigue me." Itachi drawled, suddenly appearing next to her and looking into her eyes. The girl didn't know what to do with herself under that gaze. "And what awaits us?" "A spiritualistic seance," Nakahara replied, fully aware that the essence of his phrase was directed in a different direction. "We will witness the appearance of a spirit in our material world." "Sounds great," Itachi said in a low voice, taking a step closer. "I'll get you some coffee." Tsubaki smiled, feeling her cheeks flush. She quickly turned around and disappeared through the door. Chapter 9 Father John opened the door wide, letting Sasuke into the room. Dr. Edwards stood in the hallway, watching through the glass covered with a thin steel mesh of a wooden door without a handle, painted white. The room with gray walls was filled with dim sunlight penetrating through a barred window, opposite which a pretty brunette sat on a chair. Her gaze was directed at the cloudy sky, but as soon as strangers appeared, she immediately became nervous, intertwining her fingers and lowering her gaze to them. The patient was very young, although a large belly stood out noticeably on her thin figure, and the Uchiha could not resist asking, "And who is the child's father?" Sasuke asked in a barely audible whisper, bending his head to the priest's ear. "She doesn't speak." The priest shrugged, coming closer to the patient. "Anna, my name is Father John, this is Sasuke Uchiha, we want to talk to you." The girl John had called Anna shifted in her chair, lowering her head even lower and tugging at a lock of hair, winding it around her finger with a trembling hand. Sasuke walked through the room, looking at the sparse interior. A narrow metal bed with a hard mattress and washed-out bed linen, and a bedside table. There was no other furniture except for the chair on which Anna was sitting. Father John continued to ask her something, but the Uchiha was not listening. His attention was drawn to a shiny object that had fallen over the edge of the nightstand. Putting his hand through, his fingers quickly felt the cold metal. Sasuke pulled it out into the light. Examining the bracelet. A thin chain, hung with keychains with images of animals. Quite a nice find. "Sasuke, do you have any questions?" The Holy Father's voice distracted him, and Uchiha put the find in his pocket, approaching the patient. "Do you remember what it's like when the devil gets inside you?" He was surprised by his own question and expected to be laughed at, but Anna raised her big brown eyes to him, widening in surprise. "It's like a dream," her quiet voice was barely audible in the room, "or a nightmare." Sasuke nodded as if to show that he understood her, but there was no understanding at all. Father John looked at him, carefully watching his reaction. The Uchiha thought for a moment, weighing his next steps, but took the bracelet out of his pocket. "Is this yours?" he asked, looking at her face, which instantly distorted with fear. Anna was silent, her gaze downcast, looking at her fingers. Answer. Father John ordered in a rather cold tone, which made even Sasuke feel uneasy. Yes, she finally said, still not looking up. Who gave it to you? Sasuke knelt down in front of her so that he could look into her eyes. My father. Her voice wavered and broke, so that Uchiha had to use all his strength to understand this hoarse whisper. Taking the bracelet in both hands, he reached for her wrist, deliberately slowly, giving her a chance to understand his intentions. Anna looked at him in horror, pulling her hand away, but the thin chain still closed around her wrist, clicking the lock. Sasuke looked at her protruding belly, which was just at the level of his chest, and it dawned on him. He jerked his head up, looking into the eyes of his patient. Your father did this to you? Her worried, completely confused look and tears welling up in her eyes answered him. Father John shrugged, sighing heavily. It was not the first time he had to deal with the consequences of incest. An instant later, Anna's face was distorted with anger. Her gaze became hard and cold. Sasuke involuntarily drew an analogy with his brother. He always looks at him like that if he is unhappy with something, and this is the worst punishment that the younger Uchiha could imagine. Her body sharply arched on the chair, and a loud wheeze escaped from her chest. Sasuke jumped back, almost falling to the floor, watching out of the corner of his eye as Father John tensed up and took something out of the pockets of his suit. She fell to the floor, on all fours, looking down and throwing her hand towards Sasuke, jingling her bracelet. Her gaze followed her hand, sharply turning her head. Remember that sexy slut whose throat was cut from ear to ear? Anna's voice changed, became rough and hoarse, as if they were talking to a grown man, not a fragile girl. She sent you greetings, from hell. Sasuke froze, his body filled with lead and did not want to obey. His eyes widened, and before his inner vision appeared the face of his and Itachi's mother. Mikoto was a very beautiful woman and many were surprised how she could marry someone like Fugako, not a very attractive man. But they were happy together. And her throat was really cut, but how could Anna know about it if Sasuke did not tell even his close friends? While Sasuke was trying to find a logical explanation, Father John began his duties. Grabbing the girl by the head, he sprinkled her with holy water and began to quickly read a prayer in Latin. Sasuke did not understand the words, but he saw the effect. Anna wriggled like a snake, trying to escape, swore foully and kicked her legs. Help, Sasuke, the priest shouted. Hold her. Sasuke finally came to his senses, jumping up and grabbing her legs, squeezing her ankles tightly to keep her from kicking. Father John continued to recite the prayer, only occasionally pausing to ask her name, but he was being sent to the most unpresentable places of purgatory in plain text. Suddenly, Anna raised her head, looking straight into Sasuke's eyes and seductively licking her lips. Rape me. Her lips whispered, and Sasuke turned pale. I'll come quickly. Father John redoubled his efforts, his voice now echoing loudly throughout the room and down the hall. After half an hour, during which Sasuke seemed to have turned gray and aged a decade, Anna lay still, panting on the floor. Father John helped her up and laid her down on the bed, indicating to Sasuke that their work was done. In the hallway, the omnipresent smell of bleach immediately hit his nose, and Sasuke wanted to cover his nose again. But now he was interested in questions to which he could not find answers. Is that all? He asked the priest in bewilderment. Father John stopped, looking at him with interest, his head tilted slightly to the side. What did you expect? Spinning heads and pee vomit all over the walls? It takes months, sometimes years, to exorcise a demon. So she's still possessed? Uchiha was surprised. Yes. The priest answered emotionlessly, looking at Sasuke, but smiled, realizing that the boy did not believe a single word he said or even his own eyes. I know you do not believe me, but tell me, does a thief turn on the light when he robs a house? No, he would prefer that you think he is not there. So is the devil, he prefers that you believe he does not exist. Sasuke stared at him coldly, as if trying to find a hidden meaning in the words spoken to him, but he found none. It's difficult, he finally said, rubbing his neck, when the absence of evidence serves as evidence. Yes. 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 The priest answered absent-mindedly, shaking his head vaguely, and continued walking towards the exit. Sasuke followed him. He didn't want to be in the hospital at all. The chlorine vapors had managed to burn the mucous membrane of his nose, and he would be sick for many days. What's interesting, the priest spoke again, as if reasoning out loud, skeptics and atheists, we always look for evidence of certainty. But what will happen if we find it? He gave Sasuke a distracted look, as if he was trying to solve a complex puzzle but couldn't. Sasuke raised an eyebrow questioningly. We? He asked again. Oh, yes. Father John drawled, adjusting his hair. There are times when I lose faith completely. Days, months, when I have no idea what I believe in. God or the devil, Santa Claus or the little fairies. But, he sighed heavily, trying to find the words. I'm only human, I'm weak, I have no strength. But there is something that keeps tearing and scratching from within, like God's claw. And then, when I can't stand the pain anymore, it pushes me out of the darkness into the light. Something like that. Out of the darkness into the light. He fell silent again, thinking about something of his own, smiling crookedly. Then he continued. Your friend is Tsubaki, she never lost faith. She always knows what she believes in and how to deal with it. She guides me, and I am grateful to her for that. Sasuke was silent, considering his words. He had never had anyone pour out their soul to him before, especially not to strangers, and no matter how coldly he treated Father John, even his callous soul found a response. It was hard to be someone when you didn't believe it was you. Shikamaru put his feet up on the desk covered with monitors, sipping strong coffee. He had never been particularly agile, and his natural laziness was something he couldn't suppress, and he carried out any task from Tsubaki reluctantly, but very well. Now he was chuckling and stretching, yawning, digesting in his head his heroic march from window to window in the Uchiha house, and with a bag of equipment on his shoulder. But the job was done, although Shika was surprised that he remained safe and sound. The monitors were humming, the server was also not silent, recording megabytes of information from the round-the-clock broadcast from the time-worn house onto the hard drives. Everything was quiet, the elder Uchiha's bedroom was in full view and Shika could see the smallest details. Closing his eyes and leaning back in his chair, he recalled his acquaintance with Sasuke, that grand drinking party at Uzumaki's apartment. He would never have thought that fate would again bring him together with this arrogant bastard who would never say a kind word to anyone, and those offensive words thrown by Sasuke in Shikamaru's face would forever be lodged in his head. But Shika was not one of those who could keep anger and resentment in themselves for a long time, and the life of the arrogant handsome man turned out to be far from rosy. Tsubaki burst into the utility room, holding 2 cardboard cups of fresh, still steaming coffee. Turning back, she closed the door, sending it flying free with her knee, watching as it slammed and bounced back a little, hitting the box. Nakahara turned around abruptly and literally crashed into the Uchiha's broad chest. It rose steadily from his even breathing and Tsubaki did not immediately realize that she had stopped breathing. The pleasant aroma of his eau de toilette immediately burst into her olfactory centers, cold as an iceberg, with light citrus notes. Gathering her composure into a fist, she nevertheless raised her head to him, meeting the intent gaze of incredibly black eyes, under the shadow of slightly closed fluffy eyelashes. The corners of his lips are slightly upturned, in a slight smirk, and the veiled watercolor obsidian of his gaze burns a hole in her, as if trying to look somewhere inside her being. Tsubaki feels his cheeks burning, but he can't tear his eyes away. He's too handsome, too damn sexy, he exudes masculinity and unyielding will, and he's too close. His hand, like a strong bracelet, wraps around her wrist, and Nakaharu is struck by a current so strong that her fingers unclench and her coffee cup falls to the floor, spilling its contents in a strange puddle at her feet. Her fingertips tingle and her pupils dilate. Itachi looks at her silently, a calm power in his gaze that cannot be escaped. Tsubaki feels her knees tremble and her legs buckle. But the remnants of common sense rush into her head, blocking her subconscious reflexes. That's a client, Nakahara, she scolds herself. Don't even think about it. Don't you dare. But those lips with their slightly upturned corners are so enticing, so alluring, so overwhelming. Itachi's nostrils flare, and his eyes light up as he leans forward, inhaling the scent of her hair. And Tsubaki's will is completely suppressed. She understands that if he kisses her, nothing in the world will make her tear herself away from them. Common sense screams, stamps its feet and snorts, demanding that it stop immediately, but her body does not listen, and she simply stands in front of him, unable to tear her gaze away from his eyes. I dropped my coffee, her lips whisper barely audibly, but Itachi doesn't hear her, and doesn't want to hear anything other than her ragged breathing. Tsubaki feels his hot breath on her lips, very close, just a little bit more. But the door opens with a bang. Nakahara flinches and turns around sharply, dropping the second glass as well. Itachi takes 2 steps back, looking over her head at the angry man who burst into the back room. "Is everything ready?" he asks in a demanding tone, glaring angrily at his assistant. "Yes, Professor, you may begin." Tsubaki herself was surprised at how firm her voice sounded. "Watch out, it's not like last time, got it?" Yoshiro nervously shrugs his shoulders, meeting the Uchiha's cold black eyes and clenches his fists until his knuckles turn white, but quickly looks away and leaves. Tsubaki exhales heavily, as if she's just run a cross-country race, pressing her palm to her chest. Itachi sits down on a chair, watching her gather the glasses from the floor and throw down a rag to mop up the spilled coffee, tilting her head slightly to the side. "I'll get more coffee, Itachi-san," Tsubaki says, not turning to face him, but she can feel his gaze on her back, running like prickly needles along her spine. "It's not worth it." Itachi answers, his voice calm and without a single emotion. "And we've already talked about this, Tsubaki, on a first-name basis." She nods her head, still avoiding his eyes. Nakahara feels like a naughty child, completely confused and taken aback. Her hands are still shaking from the tension, and she puts them in the pockets of her jeans. The Uchiha watches her every move, not taking his eyes off her. Applause erupts from behind the glass of the room, and Professor Yoshiro appears on stage, beaming at the assembled crowd. Hypnotism and spiritualism are 2 kinds of the same witchcraft or magic, prohibited by the church. In ancient times, hypnotists were called charmers, and spiritualists were called sorcerers, summoners of spirits, that is, demons. Orthodox miracles in the 20th century, eyewitness accounts numerous cases of crimes caused by direct teaching of spirits during spiritualistic sessions testify to the grave spiritual consequences of occultism. The professor's voice resounds across the stage, but no one in the back room listens to him. Chapter 10 The usual human perception of death is incorrect. The mind of the deceased does not accompany the body, doomed to destruction and decay. The mind continues to act in the same manifestation as during life, but thousands of missed opportunities open up before it. The mind of writers creates the greatest works that no one will print, the mind of architects, the designs of fantastic, magnificent cities that no one will build, the consciousness of mathematicians explores pure numbers within limits limited only by infinity. Professor Yoshiro continued his story, approaching the main part of his speech. He was incredibly proud of himself, for the first time, having decided to conduct a real spiritualistic session in front of such a distinguished audience. Tsubaki yawned, swinging her leg to the beat of the barely audible music pouring from the speakers of Uchiha's smartphone. Itachi half-turned to her. They had been playing Sea Battle for an hour and a half, since there was nothing to do, and the girl did not want to repeat the previous incident. All her insides were squeezed in a vice from one look at this handsome young man, but ethics demanded its own rules and norms of behavior. She simply did not have the right to do this. E3. Itachi said, scribbling on the paper with a pencil. "He wounded me," Tsubaki responded lazily, covering her eyes with fluffy eyelashes. Itachi smiled faintly. "Aren't you tired of losing? This will be the 6th time. What else can I do?" The girl shrugged, propping her chin up with her hand. "We can play for a wish," Itachi suggested. "Yeah." Tsubaki straightened up, stretching and cracking her numb arms. "You've already won, I don't have a chance. Besides, the most interesting part has begun." Itachi finally tore his gaze away from her and looked out the window. Professor Yoshiro was busily laying out the items needed for the ritual on the table. Tsubaki frowned, moving closer to the window. "What's the matter?" Itachi asked. "I don't remember using a sacrifice to summon spirits," she said sullenly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I never asked." Itachi spoke again, switching to another topic. What's wrong with your face? With a face? Nakahara turned her head towards him, raising an eyebrow in surprise, but immediately remembered the bandage. Oh, this? I was taking a cat down from a tree, and that's why it scratched me. Have you seen a doctor? Itachi asked, frowning. Why? The girl shrugged. It's just a scratch. Tsubaki. Itachi stood up, approaching her closely, and quickly ran his fingertips over the bandage, looking into her eyes. What if she has rabies? You can't be so frivolous about your health. Go see a doctor. Or should I take you by the hand? Nakahara took a deep breath, intending to object, but before she could even open her mouth, the light flickered, and then the lamps literally exploded, showering hundreds of sparks and small pieces of glass. The girl cast an anxious glance at the monitors. The devices were simply going off the scale, recording alien energy, and only now did she understand what Yoshiro had done. An ancient ritual of summoning spirits, practiced in the territory of Gaul even before the advent of Christianity. Oh no! She cried out, remembering that these rituals were now used in satanic practices. Opposite her stood Itachi, grinning, his bloodshot eyes burning into her. She jumped aside, her cheek instantly reflecting a sharp pain. Well, here we meet, little one. Itachi smiled widely, speaking in a completely alien voice. Lower and hoarse. Tsubaki blinked her eyelashes, trying to understand what was happening and what to do about it. Father John. The nurse ran down the corridor, slamming doors, out of breath and flushed from running so fast. You must come back. The priest turned abruptly and, frowning, rushed back. Sasuke stood there for a few seconds, hesitating, deciding what to do, but followed him. Dr. Edwards was very worried, and a deep wrinkle appeared between his eyebrows on his calm, peaceful face. He immediately moved towards the priest, making notes on the medical chart as he went. What's the matter? The priest asked as he walked, not even deigning to glance at the doctor. Sasuke tried to keep up. Anna tried to kill herself. Dr. Edwards said in a detached, slightly broken voice. We gave her analgesics and antidepressants, but she won't calm down. By law, we can't give her anything else. And it could have a negative impact on the child's health. I understand. Father John paused, lost in thought, then turned to the Uchiha. Sasuke, you should stay in the hallway. The priest pulled the door of the room, stepping inside. Uchiha blinked several times, considering his words, but he came to see something interesting, and that had not happened yet. Curiosity burned inside and the guy could not stay in place, hiding in the room, under the displeased gaze of Dr. Edwards. The nurses surrounded Anna from all sides, trying to fix her arms and legs. The girl struggled, screaming in a voice that was not her own, sometimes breaking into wild laughter. Her face was torn, a thin stream of blood was flowing from her forehead, and the wall next to the bed had acquired a similar color, repeating the outline of her head. Finally, they managed to fix her and put her to bed. But she continued to struggle, meeting Father John's gaze. She laughed loudly. Look what I did to her, priest. And it's not over yet. She screamed, bursting into horrible laughter. A chill ran down Sasuke's spine, but he was able to suppress this nasty feeling of fear, watching what was happening, remaining at a safe distance. The nurses quickly left the room, leaving the priest with the patient. Father John sighed heavily, but approached the bed. Demon, deceiver. Identify yourself. His voice sounds even and confident, which cheers Sasuke up. Never. Anna wheezes in response. Why did you choose her? The priest does not give up trying, starting to read the prayer rather quietly. Anna arches her back, bending so hard she looks like she's going to break, spreading her legs wide and licking her lips with a mad gleam in her eyes. Because her suffering is sweet. Anna laughs, staring into Sasuke's eyes as he leans against the wall. What are you going to do with her? Father John asks more firmly. There are flies from her rotting flesh. Anna laughs in response, and, stretching her hand to the rough surface of the wall, begins to scratch with her nails. From the disgusting sound, Sasuke wants to plug his ears, as if it were cutting exposed nerves, but the girl continues to look into his eyes, and the Uchiha suppresses the sudden impulse, maintaining apparent calm. how did you get inside her? Father John asks, splashing holy water on the girl's face, and she winces in pain, rolling around on the bed as much as her bound limbs allow. With her father's seed. Anna laughs and Sasuke gains complete control over himself. Now he is in his element and knows this disease very well. He himself thought that his brother suffered from it. So you remember being raped? Sasuke asks, stepping away from the wall. He even seemed taller, having turned into a certified specialist in mental illness. Don't talk to the devil directly, the priest reprimands him, but Sasuke doesn't listen to him anymore. He comes up to Anna almost point blank. When the devil has nothing better to do, he rapes his children. Anna answers Sasuke's question. I don't understand. Sasuke slowly moves along the bed, trying to maintain eye contact with the patient, under the priest's displeased gaze. Anna clenched her teeth and, smiling, literally spat out a phrase in a language unfamiliar to the Uchiha. Do you know curse words in all languages? Anna throws her head back and a guttural gurgling sound escapes from her chest. Let us go down and confuse their languages there, so that they will not understand each other. Sasuke frowns. The girl is definitely talented. Knows several languages, is a good Catholic. Uchiha has never been interested in the Holy Scriptures, and it is difficult to call him a religious person, but he recognized the quote immediately. This is definitely the most complex and interesting case of dissociative mental disorder that can be found. You know the Bible well, Sasuke says, trying to catch her out on little things. I know her very well, Anna laughs in response, scratching her nails on the wall again. And you are a liar, Anna. Uchiha concludes and Father John coughs loudly, choking on air from such a statement. Don't lecture me, skeptic. Anna shouts, standing up, her face distorted with anger, but Sasuke doesn't care. I chose you. Why me? Sasuke asks calmly. A liar always recognizes a liar. Anna screams, her voice becoming hoarse. Why should I be afraid of you? Uchiha shrugs. After all, the devil doesn't exist. Tremble before me, mortal. Anna loses her composure, screams and curses, looking confusedly at the guy circling around her bed. Sasuke smiles crookedly, he found the pressure point. There is no God and there is no devil. And that means you are not possessed, Anna. Father John pushes Sasuke out into the hallway as soon as the girl calms down and obediently lies down on her bed, falling into a heavy sleep. The nurses have installed equipment to monitor the blood pressure and pulse of both her and the baby. After all, pressure surges can have a detrimental effect on their health. Do you think you outsmarted him? Father John asks, and Sasuke's old disgust for the man he had felt at the very beginning of their acquaintance returns. This is not the devil. Sasuke firmly states, boring a heavy look into the priest's eyes. This is a very sick girl. She was raped by her own father, from whom she became pregnant. This is severe mental trauma. She needs a psychiatrist, not a priest. If Dr. Edwards is not competent enough, then we should look for another one and transfer her to another clinic. You don't believe me, Father John smiles, sighing heavily, and disappointment and sadness are born in the depths of his eyes. You are a skeptic. I never said I believed in all this nonsense. Sasuke almost growls, but remembers his brother. I saw things that have no explanation, and I'm confused, but Anna is sick. Doctor. The nurse slams the door to the room open. Her face is filled with fear, more than that, it's a trembling terror. She's panicking, screaming so loudly that her voice breaks. Quick footsteps are heard down the hallway, and soon a worried Dr. Edwards appears. He bursts into the room, rushing toward the bed where Anna had been sleeping peacefully just a moment ago. Father John stops in the doorway, and Sasuke peers over his shoulder. The child is dead, doctor, the nurse whispers quietly, removing the small lump, showing no signs of life, from the blood-stained bed. How could this happen? Dr. Edwards is confused and perplexed. But he quickly copes with his excitement, giving short and clear instructions. Almost immediately, orderlies rush into the room with a gurney and Anna is transferred to it, taking away in an unknown direction. Sasuke looks at the priest, trying to keep a calm expression, but it is difficult. Father John is so dejected and disappointed. He has turned pale, his eyes are wide with fear, and he seems to have aged a good 10 years. Shikamaru cursed through clenched teeth, setting his coffee mug aside. His fingers ran quickly across the keyboard, but it produced no results, and the white noise continued to rule the monitors. He tried again, changing the sequence of commands, checking the system, but everything was in perfect order. Leaning back in his chair, he looks at the keys with the fancy keychain, but he really wouldn't have to go back and reconnect all the cameras and sensors? This prospect didn't please him, and the guy frowned, trying to establish a connection remotely. He really didn't want to climb the walls again, and the weather had gotten worse, and it started raining again. Shika turned away for a second, examining the blinking LEDs of the server, and then glanced back at the monitors and froze, speechless. The face that looked at him from the screen, more like a muzzle, shocked the guy. He felt blood flowing from his nose, dripping in large drops onto the table and keyboard, but he didn't pay attention to it. The image on the monitor twitched, replaced by white noise, and blinked again, showing a clear picture of the Uchiha house, with all the details. Chapter 11 Sasuke stared blankly at his hands, tightly clutching a cup of tea. He hadn't yet managed to let go of what he had experienced. Tsubaki sat opposite him, absent-mindedly rubbing her face with her hands. Damn Yoshiro and his antics. What the hell possessed him to summon the devil when he was right next to her? Today had brought many new and unexpected things, and it was worth thinking about carefully. He knew her, was in her, controlled her. The feeling on her cheek never went away, she felt her skin growing cold and slowly dying. That incident in the hospital. That shouldn't have happened, what Shika had seen on the monitor, the recording was never saved, as if someone was cleaning up after themselves. Itachi had never shown up, and the girl had no idea where he had gone after he had slammed her into the wall, causing Nakahara to lose consciousness for a good half hour. Everything was connected and everything seemed disjointed, a cunning game that threw even her into a state of panic. I don't understand, Sasuke said quietly, not taking his eyes off his hands. How could this happen? But she couldn't harm the child, Tsubaki answered confidently, she had enough of her own worries without trying to deal with Sasuke's problems. She was tied up. Exactly. Sasuke abruptly raised his head to her, looking into her eyes. His inky pools were burning with fear and despair, but he himself did not understand the reason for this state. Everything happened too quickly, and the Uchiha was still confused in his feelings and memories. I don't understand. She was stable, and then suddenly and that's it. It happens. Tsubaki nodded. She had massive internal bleeding, I spoke with Father John, they couldn't save her. Sasuke, it's not your fault, you were just an observer, don't blame yourself, it's stupid. Even Father John couldn't do anything. He did what he wanted, took a life. It's sad, but it happens. You can't always help everyone who needs help. I feel like I've lost myself, Sasuke said dryly, narrowing his eyes. You'll figure it out. The girl assured him, lowering her voice. After a few seconds of silence, she continued. If you have any questions, call. Nakahara pulled a tattered business card from her jacket pocket. Sasuke clutched it in his fingers, examining the single phone number, an international line. You're leaving? He raised an eyebrow in surprise, and everything inside him went cold. Sasuke instantly felt abandoned and alone. Just for a couple of days, Tsubaki assured, squeezing his fingers into her palm. I need to talk to Father Frederick. What we're facing is beyond my capabilities. I can't help, it's too much for me. Besides, I'm not the best option in this game. What are you talking about? Sasuke didn't understand her train of thought at all, but he tried desperately. Tsubaki knew more than he did, and some information was being kept from him, and the Uchiha didn't like that. Nakahara sighed heavily, looking around the small cafe with a critical eye. There were few customers, a few couples cooing in the far corner, and a couple of lonely people near the bar. The bartender lazily wiped the counter, periodically pouring bourbon for customers. There were no waitresses in sight. After making sure that no one was paying attention to their modest company, she reached out to her wounded cheek, peeling off the bandage. Sasuke made an incomprehensible hissing sound, and his eyes suddenly widened. He could not resist his impulse and touched his cold fingers to the blackened skin. What is this? He was confused and disoriented. Sasuke had never been so depressed before and he had no idea how to deal with it. This is my old acquaintance, Sasuke. Tsubaki spoke calmly, her face was extremely collected and serious, but her gaze remained kind and gentle. I need to cleanse myself. Father Frederick knows how to deal with this. If I don't take action now, it won't be difficult for him to seize power over me. I'm too vulnerable in this situation. Sasuke lowered his head, finally taking a sip of his now cold tea. That girl, Anna, she said she chose me, Sasuke said quietly, trying to shed light on his feelings. That I was a liar and mentioned my mother. You shouldn't believe that. He's pulling your leg, Tsubaki assured reproachfully, putting the bandage back in place. I know, Sasuke thought for a second, then continued, looking up at her, what if it's true? No, I don't believe it at all, but maybe it's connected. That is, our parents died under very mysterious circumstances. The police never found the robbers who broke into our house and there was even a version that it was done by one of the family members. They suspected my father and Itachi, I don't remember the details well, but… Sasuke's expression was crestfallen. It was clear from his expression how hard it was for him to say these words. Memories fell like a heavy avalanche on his battered, squeezed-out soul. Tsubaki patted him on the shoulder, which made the boy flinch, clearly not expecting such behavior. I understand. She said sympathetically. I know how much it hurts, Sasuke, believe me. Your brother needs you, he loves you and maybe it's because of you that he hasn't lost himself yet. Just a couple of days, and then we'll get serious. Shika will prepare everything, if anything, he's always nearby. You don't even have to call him, just tell him into the camera and he'll come. Sasuke rubbed his chin thoughtfully, as if weighing his options. The prospect of spending time with Shikamaru didn't appeal to him, he didn't need him to delve into the depths of his deepest fears, but he had no right to hold Tsubaki back either. And only now did the younger Uchiha wonder when he had managed to become so attached to her. No, Sasuke didn't have romantic feelings for her, that would have been mean, towards his brother, but this girl, whom he had only known for